Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming on time.
Tyrone, Tyrone.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming on time. We have an extensive agenda for this evening. I hope you were all enjoying April Fool's Day, but this is not an April Fool's Day comment. If you're looking at your agenda, We will not be hearing from 1323 Dean Street this evening. The architect, Mr. Guo, has removed that application from this meeting. So that's one down. The order will commence with 1034, 1042 Atlantic Avenue. This is their repeat preliminary discussion, and they've been patient trying to make sure we understand what their proposal is. Then we'll do two items that need to be voted on. The first one would be 165A St. Mark's Avenue in the Prospect Heights Historic District. And then the next one would be an application for certificate of appropriateness for 120 Underhill Avenue, also in the Prospect Heights Historic District. And then we'll do the remainder of the agenda as printed and circulated. So I beg you all to hang in there, and we'll be succinct and not drift off into colloquy. And right now we're looking for a roll call in a moment, which we could dispense with since we're not doing a voting item right away, but I think we should do the roll call. Vice Chair Witherspoon, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening.
Good evening. Should we do the roll call now, or do you want to wait still?
Sure. We can do it
Okay.
now.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Albert Appleton. Princess Ben James.
I don't know what the hell I'm listening to right now.
John Buchholz. Buchholz, sorry. Robert Callahan. Janet
Do I hear-
Collins.
I'm sorry, do I hear water running? Okay, everybody please mute except for Ms. Witherspoon. Thank you.
Ms. Witherspoon, please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Go
Okay,
ahead.
great. Okay. Robert Callahan. Janet Collins.
Present.
Nora Daniel. James Ellis. Kevin Farley. Najani Granville. Kathy Iceland.
Present.
Zazir Majorna.
Kathy Iceland is here.
Thank you, Kathy. Zazir Majorna. Peter Crashes.
Here.
Sarah Lazar.
Here.
Gary Norton. Fiora Ortiz.
Here.
Robert Puka.
Present.
Adam Sachs. Gib Vaconi.
Here.
Ethel Tyus.
Present.
Sharon Wedderburn. Pierce is here. That's me. Elaine Weinstein.
Here.
Deborah Young.
I'm here.
Thank you. So we have 11 so far that are present.
Thank you. I have Mr. Ellis as writing in to say he would be late, so basically he's excused at the moment. We may have a conflict in timing on what's on the website. I'm not quite sure, between 6:15 and 6:30, but at any rate, I would ask the proponents of 1034, 1042 Atlantic Avenue to give us a summary of their proposal again, and we can have a short Q&A on that. Is that, who's going to present for 1034, 1042 Atlantic Avenue? Don't everybody speak at once.
Hi.
Hi, I thought it was you.
It's me.
Hi,
Yeah.
Nate.
Hi. So Ellie will be joining us shortly. He's having some sort of sign-in troubles. So give us one more minute, please, and he'll be right with us.
Do you want to give a quick summary?
Yeah, sure. This is a project for which we are seeking a rezone to a R7A C24 on the backside of the block on Pacific Street, and then for the Atlantic Street portion, we are seeking a C63A. We've met with city planning a few times over the past 16 months. This is something where we've gone back and forth a lot with the council member. The project has a significant youth center component. My client Ellie Pariente is somebody who's had some success in this area with his previous rezoning, and he was the first person to submit himself to the restrictive declaration on the deed, which is now, from what I understand, the standard practice going forward. We've met with you, Ethel, in the past. I think the last time that we showed this to you was I think last spring, maybe the early summer, and the project hasn't significantly changed. We have a 12,000 square foot youth center, which the whole project has been kind of crafted around. There's essentially two separate buildings. There's one building facing Atlantic, which has the higher bulk, and then there's one on the backside, which has a much smaller bulk. The bulk that we're seeking for the Pacific Street side is the same that's across the street. And I see that we have Ellie signed on now, so maybe he could kind of give you some of the higher level overview before we get back into the details.
So first of all, I apologize.
Thank you, Nick. And I
Thank
just
you, Ethel.
want to point out to everyone that if you looked at the materials that the board office sent around in Dropbox on page 28, there's a great summary on the project. And I really appreciate Mr. Pariente's coming back and sharing his plans with us. And I do recall that Grand Pacific, with its 9 stories and 64 dwelling units, was a first for restrictive declaration in this area, but not a first for restrictive declarations of a similar ilk throughout the rest of New York City. Take it away, Mr. Pariente.
Okay, so first of all, I have to apologize and note how ironic the situation is. I've been waiting to get on this call for like a year and a half, and I've been on all these calls with no issues whatsoever. And the one time I'm due to present is when I have.
Oh, Jesus.
It's freezing.
He's frozen. Yeah.
Oh, no.
That's just horrible. All right.
So Nick, fill in the blanks.
Oh, my Lord, Ethel. Okay. All right. Well, I really don't want to start until he kind of gives some more color commentary as to what kind of preceded this. I mean, we've been going back and forth with Ms. Cumbo's office for some time. The community facility is something that she supports, or that she's told us that she supports. She's told us that she's reached out to Winston von Engel from the Brooklyn DCP office, and that this is on a shortlisted supported projects list. We have, I think we have a lot of goodwill from the community because of Ellie's history in this community and his his demonstrated commitment to the community. And this, like his previous project, is something that he fully intends to build and to follow through on. So Ellie has a history as a developer in Manhattan. His first Brooklyn project is currently, I think he just got approved for the project for the Pacific Grand site, and so he'll be starting that shortly. And he's just really committed to this area. He sees it as this very interesting like nexus between all these neighborhoods where these manufacturing sites have been laying dormant for all this time. I'm probably putting words in his mouth at this point, so I will just jump right into the presentation. So let me see. Let me just share this. So here is my screen. Can you see my screen?
Now we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so this project came to us on the heels of the successful Pacific Grand rezoning project, and so when we heard about it for the first time, we saw it was on the same block. We saw that it had all of the same good bones that recommended the Pacific Grand site. You have the proximity to all the local transportation. You're on this major thoroughfare. And it's this very interesting site. It had certain site characteristics which obviously distinguished it from Pacific Grand. But we had already looked at Pacific Grand in the context of Atlantic Avenue, just because of how close it was to the corner there, and also because at one early point there was a thought to try to incorporate the backside of the block, that being the Atlantic side for that project. So. So we were familiar with this area. We were familiar with certain of the design challenges. But the principal thing in this area being that it's basically tabula rasa to a large extent on this strip that's that fronts Atlantic. So right now, you have a lot of these empty car parking types of lots. You have warehouses. There's a lot of storage facilities. And the project site over here, you can see, is basically in this island of all this purple stuff, which is industrial manufacturing and, otherwise like utility type vehicle storage uses. So, you can see here that we're very, very proximal to local transportation, very well integrated with all this bus infrastructure. It's something that if you're to look at transit-oriented development as like an ethos for development, this would be a site which would be highly recommended for higher bulk, than something that would be further away from so much transportation. So this is what we are proposing. What Ellie did with his last building was to commit to some local artists to do lots of muraling, and what we saw from the public response and what we saw from the response from the community board, from the community, from the leaders of the community board, was that this was something that gained traction because there was a thought that it could kind of start to brand this neighborhood that up until now, well, not the neighborhood as a whole, just this part that's on Atlantic, but this strip, to gain a certain identity as perhaps some sort of mural district. So to that end, all of the buildings that Ellie has been proposing have a very strong built-in art components. So the mural on this facade is something that you'll see as a repeated motif for this building and also for the back building. So what we have for this building is a ground floor commercial. And the ground floor commercial has been purposefully minimized so that the focus is on a ground floor program, which is this youth center. So the youth center occupies a central position, which basically anchors the entire composition of the building facade. And what this does is it takes advantage of the sidewalk widening that city planning asked us to put in. So the sidewalk widening basically is in this area, they're asking because of the width of the street, they think that 20 feet is appropriate. So for this building and also for other buildings that we've worked on in this area, we have pushed back the facade so that we have a full 20-foot wide sidewalk. So in addition to this 20-foot wide sidewalk, we've also pocketed in this area here an additional 6 or 7 feet. So this area really is someplace that we have thought of as something to offer back to the community, something that we could furnish, something that would be kind of this urban living room that could have this visual connection to this very robust community facility, the youth center, which would be partially located in the cellar and on the first floor. So the access for the community facility is principally from the Pacific Street side. We have a secondary access over here. We have a secondary lobby, which is quite small. Something else that you might note are these panels over here. So these are panels that kind of take the idea of like the mural, and they kind of incorporate more of a like relief type of mechanism. So the thought is that we would be working with some local artists who would design the panels, and then we could stamp them. We could light them. We could work with them collaboratively. So this has been conceived as a canvas, as a backdrop, and as a frame, for this community facility use. So our thought is that this is a street which has been very, very traffic dominant, which has been, not very pedestrian friendly. So it's not just enough to give the 20-foot depth. We thought that this was a much more fully conceived idea of how to use this depth and create someplace that maybe could be, like I said, like an urban living room, something where people could pause, something where children could have some interaction with everything that was going on below. Over here to the right, you can see that the way that we oriented the panels is to minimize the effect of the ground floor commercial. The ground floor commercial, we have about 8,000 square feet of it. The site is in total 24,000 square feet. So let me continue we'll get more into the nitty-gritty of the site once we get past this conceptual heart of the whole thing. So you can see
I'm back.
Okay, welcome.
So, go ahead. I'm gonna let you, continue, and then I'll jump in when it's needed.
Okay, great. Okay, so you can see over here, this is the Pacific Grand building, and these are the murals that have been programmed for this lot line wall. So these are very, very visible from Atlantic when you come up and down from the west and from the east. So in the interest of
bringing art into the neighborhood. Yes,
thank you, Eli. So this is something that we seek to program with these new buildings as well. So you can see that there's this mural here, and then we have the other mural on the back building, which is on Pacific Street, which can be seen from certain vantage points on Atlantic. Okay, so let me see. So this is the Pacific Street side. This is where we have the main entry for the youth center. You can see it over here. We have an entry for the residential portion of this building in the back. This building is about 30,000 square feet. The site is 60 feet wide over here. The building, because it's an R7A, tops out at about 95 feet. So, we have these three different openings over here. The youth center, the entry to the residential, and then we have some parking down here, which we provided. When we looked at the site and when we considered how much residential use there was, how much commercial use there was, all the mix of these uses, it seemed inadvisable to not provide at least a little parking. So we have a little parking which has been proposed. This is looking. You could see this mural over here and this mural over here. So this is the site. Okay, so the site is 24,000 square feet total. And you have 18,000 square feet on the front and then 6,000 square feet on the back. The proposed district boundary runs mid-block as is typical for city planning. We have the C63A fronting Atlantic, the R7A fronting onto Pacific back here. So this is part of the DCP submission. This is the site plan. You don't really need to see this. Yes.
Please go back to the previous to the diagram for the lot. Yeah.
Sure.
The one thing that I wanted to point out, and again, I'll get to apologize 1,000 times later for my phone mishaps, for my computer mishaps. But the one thing I wanted to point out, which I'm sure somebody would question, and we can go into further details, but the interesting fact about this particular Atlantic Avenue building is that 100 feet of it, 100 feet of depth fall under the Atlantic Avenue zoning, and 20 feet of it will fall under the Pacific Street R7A zoning, which is why, as I think I started explaining last time, it gives us a blended density for the entire Atlantic Avenue building of about 7.9 FAR. Later in the presentation, Nick can explain the exact calculation, but that's the reason why the zoning on this not clear cut number is because it's split between two zoning lots. So, but Nick, you can continue. I just wanted to point that out.
Sure. Okay, so Ollie, so the time is now. The time that I'll be talking about that is now, because here's this building. So what we have is about 7.3 FAR for the residential, which is from the second floor up. And we have about 0.6 for the commercial, which is on the ground floor over here. We'll be showing you floor plans in a second. And there's not a lot of FAR for the community facility at this part of the building, because most of it is actually a void. So it's a void because you have the double height space. So there's a big hole. So when you have a hole like this going down to the cellar, it doesn't count towards your floor area. So we don't have a lot of floor area, even though we have a massive presence of this community facility from the Atlantic side. So when you add all those numbers together, then you get to that 7.9 number, this is we've chosen to like articulate the building like this for many reasons, but principally because we think that should this go through, this building will be standing alone maybe for a few years, and because it's something that is very, very visible, from all sides. We wanted this opportunity to give some more life to the facades, some more articulation. So on this side, on this eastern side, we are able to infill with some fenestration over here. We have another mural over here also. You can see the other mural for the back building as well. And on this side, when we set back, we're able to stick on balconies in a way that even should something be built up in the future, these balconies would have north and south exposures, which would permit them to remain useful. So, but in the meantime, we get the nice mural for the base. So the proportion of the building is not too squat, not too elongated. We have the nice mini tower on the base configuration here, which is made possible by these articulations. Okay, now this is the back building, the one that's on Pacific. So over here, the R7A C24 lets us do 4.6. However, when you have if you have a project which is divided by the district boundary, you're able to move around floor area on the site if you're able to not exceed heights and setback limits. So in this case, because we have all the community facility floor area, the stuff which is not in the cellar, stuff which is on the ground floor, which counts towards your floor area. Since we have that on the ground floor here, that bumps up the FAR. So we go up a little bit above the 4.6, but not much, and it still stays within a typical R7A shape and size, which is found across the street as well. So here are the plans. So this is the ground floor plan over here. Okay, so we have this big opening here down into the cellar where you have the big street presence. You have the urban living room here. Right next to it, you have the entry to the residential, which is biased to the side over here. You have the commercial space over here. There's no real access to the commercial space from the Pacific Street side. We just have a convenience opening over here, which will probably be necessary for egress. So, it's just a hallway basically. Then you see the residential entry over here for the smaller building that's on Pacific. And then you have the bulk of the actual floor area for the community facility, about 2,000 square feet, with its own dedicated elevator over here. We have the secondary lobby also with a dedicated elevator coming off of Atlantic. And these two lobbies lead down to this gigantic space down here, which is about 10,000 square feet in the cellar. Now, we haven't done anything to program it yet because we haven't yoked ourselves to anybody yet. So,
I'm
yes.
I'm seeing Chad, that there's some
Sure.
questions about the parking. Can you?
Sure.
I heard you mention it earlier, but can you explain why? So just to clarify, we are presenting some parking spots, but a much lower amount than usually required per the amount of units in order
Yes.
to make way for the community center. We could ask a full waiver, but my understanding is that city planning does like to have at least a minimum of parking. I forgot what the equation is. I think, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's one parking spot per every 3 apartments. Is that, or per every, right? Nick, what is the
You know
exact
what?
equation?
I have heard that, but I don't quite recall what it was for this project particularly, Ellie. But that sounds
40
reasonable. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have 40 spots, and this was something that we came to because we saw how many square feet we have for the commercial, and we saw how many units we have. We have about 200 units between the two buildings. So the thought was this is something which is, these people will bring, some may have cars, and it does make it attractive, to people to be able to, to lease a spot where they live in the building.
But also to address the concern, as you can see on the diagram, the smaller, the thinner building is the Pacific Street side. And that's where the entrance to the parking will be in order not to create additional traffic on Atlantic Avenue. So
Exactly.
the entry to the parking will be from Pacific Street.
Exactly. So the way that you enter into this community facility, you come in off of Pacific Street, and then there's going to be a big lobby, some offices, and then there's a big double height space over here with a grand stair. The grand stair exits down into the main space. So we have a main space over here, which by itself is about 6,000 square feet, and then we have about 4,000 square feet back here, which could be programmed as offices, as studios, as many different programs. So going to the next floors, these are the typical upper floors right now. This is the building base over here. You can see that we have a very typical double-loaded corridor. This is the Pacific Street building. We have many fewer units back here. There's an opportunity here, to potentially consider doing a mix of rentals and condos. It's not exactly clear which way that this will go yet. This is something that Ellie would have to consider much more.
No, it's 100%. No, it's 100% rentals.
It's
within
100%
the
rentals.
MIH
Okay.
Rentals.
Got you. Okay.
And
Got you.
also,
Okay.
I'll continue to your presentation, Nick, but there's a lot of questions that were asked also about the MIH. So I think just to clarify, we'll finish the architectural presentation and then I'll jump into, the affordability options, the art and the youth center and everything. So Nick, as Ethel said, if you want to wrap up the architectural presentation, and I'll jump into some of these issues that I just mentioned.
Yeah, sure. Okay, guys. Also, I can't see the text messages, so sorry if this is running very long. I haven't seen any prompts to end yet. So let me just run through this real quick, and I will yield the floor back to Ellie. So, okay, so these are the upper floors. this is just a breakdown of how many units we have on every single floor. You know, we typically have between 10 and 13 units every single floor for the front building and 5 units in the back building. These are some of the conceptual images that we first considered when we first started looking at this area. It was a Mirroring district. We were looking at Wynwood. We were looking at some neighborhoods in Spain. You know, it's something that we and also the council member really like. Here are some concept images for this community facility. I have it contemplated as something which could be like a very strong after school program. It might be something which will be yoked solely to a single youth center. This is something that's evolving right now. Ellie can speak to that more. Here's some more images for the youth center, and as we always do, you know, everything that we're doing, especially with these new local laws coming out, has to be as green and as friendly to the environment as it can be. There's all sorts of laws coming in that will come into effect in the next 3 or 4 years, which are going to start taxing carbon outputs. So anything that's being built now is being, thank God, finally forced to be as green as it can be. So you'll see hyper insulation, you'll see a lot of green roofs, you'll see a lot of very, very efficient mechanical systems, some urban solar. So this is all stuff which is baked into this design. So when we laid everything out, we had considered solar angles, solar orientation, the green roof, so on and so forth. So, what you see is a very real project. We've spent a lot of time kind of forming it, based around the heart of it, which is this youth center. And, thank you for the time to present. And we would like to hear your feedback.
Community members, do you have questions on the project? Now's the time. They're working with us to try to feel the pulse and get it right. So if you have questions, please bring them forward now.
Okay,
Well,
so
well,
wait,
yes.
hold on a second. I just want to make sure that we're maintaining order. So I know that right out the box there was one question, because there's so many people, you have to please still, at least, even if you raise your hand or put it in the chat, but we all can't try to speak at the same time. But I will begin with the first question that was asked in terms, could either you, Mr. Liberis, or Mr. Pariente speak to the fact that Lori Cumbo has supported this 18-story unit when she and the borough president signed off on a CB8 letter to the limit of 14 stories.
So, Lori, the council member combo has supported the overall project. The density that is presented here is what was suggested to us by city planning and what was, determined in collaboration with them. We didn't obviously come up with it on our own. And again, the stories, we can reduce the amount of stories. It just would lead to a more bulky building, because the density will remain the same. But ultimately, I haven't heard any objection from the council member's office as to the number of stories. I do know that the community center was a significant, amenity that everyone involved thinks would benefit the neighborhood. And again, so long as we're in line with what city planning is requesting, that's after that is the community boards. As you know, Mrs. Combo has always been supportive of the community board's vision. So whatever the community board supports, theoretically she will support. So as much as support the project, as Ms. Tice made.
Unfortunately, you're breaking up. I don't know if you can hear us.
I'm sorry?
You were breaking up in the last, 15-20 seconds.
Oh, sorry. I don't know
think
what
you're
you
good
heard,
now.
but sorry. I was saying Yeah, so I mean, my main focus is to get the community board's support and to design this building, for lack of a better word, in collaboration, with the community board, which is why I came in, back in December, early on, to get some feedback on the use of the community center. And, I haven't really gotten that much feedback, but basically what I would do is whatever the community board as a whole decides to, to have me built on the ground floor is what I will build. But the youth center was an initiative that was very attractive to the council member, and I'm just here trying to get the community board support. And after that, how the council member reacts is, will depend on your reaction.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. We have quite a few comments. Just give me a second here to just spin through what we have. There is a mention that they'd like to see a dedicated bus lane on Atlantic Avenue.
My understanding is that that's really a Department of Transportation. That's a
Yes.
DOT issue. That's not all we are responsible for. Is the sidewalk widening, which was
Yes.
requested by city planning, and which we think is would make the building a great anchor for the neighborhood. As far as bus lane, that's above our
Right.
scope.
I understand. And someone did ask about affordable housing. So I did see that you answered that it will have 25%.
Again, we, theoretically, we're allowed to do option 1, option 2. Historically, I know that community board 8, as well as the council member, prefers option 1 to get higher levels of affordability. I also saw some question from somebody asking about whether or not there'll be apartments available, for him. What I can say is that on the current project we're building on Grand Avenue, we retain intact, which is based on Dean Street, where you use, where the world was normal, where you used to hold your meetings. And the main reason is to make sure that as many of the affordable units that we're delivering go to community members, as opposed to just people that are smart enough to get on the lottery quickly. As far as the levels of affordability that I see somebody asking about, I mean, it's a long thing, it's a complicated thing to explain, but basically there's 40 of the 25% of units that we're required to deliver. I apologize if my numbers are slightly off, but I believe 40% of them are supposed to be below 60% of AMI, of average median income. And then another 40% below 60%, and then 20% are at very low levels of very high levels of affordability. So even below 20% of AMI. But to be honest with you, if you want, I'm sure the community board has some resources to explain how the MIH options work, because I won't be able to explain it as well as a presentation on MIH could.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any more questions that have not been answered that you may have?
Hi, sorry. My name's Matt. I live on Civic Street. I can't get the chat to go to everyone. Wasn't there a plan to have a community center in the building that's being constructed presently on Pacific Street, very nearby? And is this project a part of that? How did that community center ended up moving over into this development that we're talking about now?
So there was never a community center supposed to be built on the corner of Grand and Pacific. There's an M Crown. There's a portion of the ground floor that is dedicated to M Crown uses, as requested by the community board's vision. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the M Crown uses, but those include many uses such as pre-Ks, childcare, doctor's offices. There's many uses that can go into that. So as Nick mentioned early on the call, we did, put in the restricted declaration that we filed on the property that we are indeed dedicating 25% of the space to the M Crown uses. We did file the GOP plans and identified this particular space as M Crown. Which exact use is going to end up going into the space it's very hard to tell because in the past 9-10 months, the retail world and the commercial leasing has essentially stopped. So it's not like we've been, able to get interest from anybody. But as I said early on, if I had to guess, I would think it's going to end up being some type of a childcare or, after school or childcare program. That's what I'm hearing. But we haven't signed anybody yet. And, we're nowhere near signing. But again, as per the restrictive declaration, we can only lease it to certain, uses. And those are the M-Crown uses. I don't know if that answers your question.
Kind of. I wasn't referring to Grand Avenue project. I was referring to the project that's being built on Pacific Street, just across from 1033. It would be kind of catty corner in the middle of the street from where the Pacific-facing part of this project is going to be.
Oh, 1010. I think it's
1010,
1010.
Yeah, 1010
Yeah.
Pacific. Yeah, I'm not involved with this project at all. I don't.
Okay.
They haven't made any binding commitment legally, so I honestly couldn't tell you what they plan on doing.
That was the one that got away. Very sketchy principals who look you in the eye and tell you one thing and do something else.
That's not me.
I guess I don't really understand how or why that happens and what's to stop it from happening again.
Well, to go into it quick.
May I answer that if you don't mind, Mr. Perriente?
Of course.
Thank you. If the community works together, we get the things we need.
Amen.
Okay, thank you.
And on a legal front, again, because I know that the question will be asked, the process that the community board came up with is to request of me on this other project to file a restrictive declaration on the property, committing to deliver what we said we would deliver, such as the M-Crown space, the height limitations, the option 1 MIH, etc. So basically, after the 1010, I'm not going to call it fiasco, but after the 1010, lesson episode, yeah. What we realized, I think the community board realized that the best way to keep developers' feet to the fire is to literally put a restrictive declaration on title that would prevent them from building anything other than what they've committed to build. So that's the legal remedy that we plan on using.
Understood. Thanks.
So
Fior, would you like to ask your question?
yes, I don't know if you guys can see me. I have technical problems here, but I'm actually a tenant of 1022 Pacific Street. So I live nearby the newly being constructed 1010 Pacific Street building. We were already flooded by the construction, and now facing us is the 10. Oops, here I am. Hi, is the 1035 building. I have been a long-term rent-stabilized resident here for 20 years, and there's actually more community on this block than you think. Just because it has been mostly commercial doesn't mean that there is not a residential community, long-term tenants here, like the people who live actually right next to 1035, like 1033 and 1031 Pacific Street, will lose their sunshine. We all, like the 14 or 17, whatever you guys propose, building will throw shadow on our block. Parking being from Pacific Street, access to Pacific Street, we already have parking problems here due to the new building being built. Like, I just would love for all of you to take into consideration that there actually, even though these blocks here from Grant to Franklin Avenue seem to be so low residential, I would like you to take in consideration that there's actually a community existing here. There are small businesses here, and there are people here and artists. Like, you talk about all the art you're doing. I'm an artist. I'm a co-founder of a nonprofit arts organization. We are 15 years old. Like, so please keep in mind that this is a microcosmos here and not just that blank canvas for a developer. I just need to hear ours as well, because it's really upsetting to us, as we feel like we're just being like used as like another wild dream of, we will have 375 new apartments within this little parameter. So where's everybody going? Like how can we have so many more people here? And it's not even, it's the beginning, it feels like, because there's more happening on Grand and Pacific. So I'm sorry, I'm very emotional. I'm going to be quiet now. And thank you for listening, hearing me out, but it's just a lot.
So
Okay.
first of all, I'm sorry to hear about your experience. And again, as I said earlier, I really can't speak about another developer. You know, as everyone knows, I mean, I don't know everyone, but as many people on this call know, the 1010 Pacific developers haven't been an example of, you know, communication with this community. So you're certainly not going to hear me defending anybody. As far as the second thing you mentioned about the light, I would like to point out that the building we're building on the building that we're building on Pacific Street is much lower than the one contemplated at 1010. We're, you know, altogether going to be below 8 stories with setbacks. So really, it's going to be a thin 60-foot wide building that gets to about 30 foot wide as you get above the 5th floor. So it is, to give you perspective, I think 1010 Pacific is something like 150,000 square feet. This building on Pacific will be 27,000. And then the one on Atlantic Avenue, again, is about 200 feet away. You know, I mean, with the depth of the building, call it 150 feet away from Pacific Street. And what we specifically try to do is to do all these setbacks to make sure that we do not block light and air from getting onto Pacific Street and the rest of the neighborhood. As far as the art you mentioned, that's something that I wanted to touch on that Nick mentioned early on. Because the neighborhood is so greedy and, you know, has this industrial character, we, in collaboration with Mrs. Combo, always thought that the art will be a huge part of it. And we are going to be interviewing different artists. We have already. We're working with an agency called the Bushwick Collaborative that handles, you know, mural art. And if you'd like to apply, or if you'd like, you know, if that's something, some kind of work that you do, I'm happy to discuss with you. But the idea was to inject life into these blocks with as much color and art as we can, rather than just, you know, red bricks and, you know, metal and stuff like that. So, you know, the idea about the art is also to make the area pleasant to live for residents.
Okay, thank you so much. I have one more, not myself, but there is one more question from Fior. That will be the last question. I'm sorry, we just have to move on with the agenda. Fior, please, thank you.
I also need to point out that...
Excuse me, hello, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
I'm trying to put a question in the chat, but
right,
like
I understand. I understand
chat.
what you're saying. I understand, but there are questions that preceded you, so we're only going to have one more question.
No, that's fine. I don't have a question. I just want to point out that you can change the settings so everyone can participate in the chat.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Tan. Fior, please.
Thank you, Ms. Weatherspoon. My question was, the residents of this project will likely utilize the AC trains, either at Clinton, Washington, and or Fulton. And not only are these lines congested, well, pre-COVID, one day we'll all go back to our offices and school, but the stations are pretty decrepit. Will the developers work with the MTA to improve these stations for the tenants? This project will bring in hundreds of people to the neighborhood, further stressing the infrastructure.
So, I mean, that's really a question for city planning. I'm not knowledgeable to discuss, you know, subway infrastructure. I would be lying if I claim to have any kind of answer that can, you know, that can help.
Well, I can say something. I can say something here. There are certain zoning frameworks that would have DCP compel the developer to do something like this, but we're so far from such a train station that there's no existing framework to kind of introduce or enforce this. I would say that this is we often run into this question when we present, because we're often doing these projects which are close to these transit stations. And the advice that I'm always giving community boards is that this is something that kind of falls back on the shoulders of the community board. If there is some sort of coordinated, concerted action to go, to the city, there is stuff that can be done. But unless the developer is right up against the subway line or right next to the station, there's no framework within the rezoning to kind of to have that happen.
Thank you. I just want to let the committee know we appreciate your comments and questions and concerns, but this will come back to us again for review. Okay, Ms. Tyus?
Thank you very much, Ms. Weatherspoon. Thank you all for sitting in on that, and I thank Mr. Pariente for being so supportive of what the community is looking for, and we hope that we can tailor this some more to be closer to the M-Crown vision for the M1 district. So we're going to move on now to 165A St. Mark's Avenue in the Prospect Heights Historic District. This is an application for a certificate of appropriateness for a rear yard addition. Are the proponents on the call?
Yes, I am. Graydon Yarrick, the architect.
Hi. Do you want to share your screen and proceed with your presentation?
Sure. Let's see. Maybe you can, let's see. It doesn't appear that I can, I have to open, 1 second, please.
Okay. And just so we know going in, based on the initial agenda that I recited at the beginning, each one of those items would have 20 to 25 minutes and then another 5 minutes or so at the end for Q&A. That way we're keeping this meeting to a total of 2 hours. Okay,
it seems, okay.
So
it seems I need to log out and
log
it seems
back
I need
in?
to log out and
Okay.
yes.
Do you have a colleague who can talk while you're reshuffling?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, we'll be patient.
Thank you.
All right, so
Thank you.
now, you're welcome. So I hope everybody had a chance to look at the materials that Ms. George and Ms. Neal put in the Dropbox for this item, 165A St. Mark's Avenue in the Prospect Heights Historic District. And after we do this one, we'll do 120 Underhill. So this is a rear yard addition on a 1 or 2 family home. The things you want to look for in something like that, usually the neighbors show up, is how much of an intrusion is it going to be on the neighbors? How far does it go to the rear lot line? And things like that. I see Mr. Grayson is back on.
Yes, and can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So yes, this is a townhouse on St. Mark's Avenue. It's 16 feet wide and about 50 feet deep. And then it has a very large backyard. It's about 60 feet. It's 2 rooms deep, and the family wants to expand. They're having children, and they want more living space. So we're proposing a 500 square foot addition in the back. It's 2 stories, and it extends 20 feet on the ground level and 15 feet on the second. So it's rather, as you can see in this diagram here, it's somewhat smaller than the addition 4 doors down. And to our right is a 2-story addition. And then across across the gardens on Bergen Street, there are some larger additions. Here is a series of photos of the backyards. Ours is the third here with, you know, the rectangle, dashed rectangle around it. So there's a one-story addition that is isn't code compliant. We want to tear that down and build our addition. To the right, to the left of it, you can see the two-story addition on the neighbor's house, and then to the right of us are a series of one-story additions. One is in orange in the background, 4 doors down. It's a bit longer than ours. And then on the bottom here, you can see a large addition. It was 2 stories added to the roof of a townhouse, and then a full build out of the back. And then directly across from us are a series of one-story additions. So this is our site here, and you can see the large expansion behind us, and then a series of large warehouse buildings. These are all apartment buildings. These townhouses are all the same, and then these are more grand, larger townhouses with an additional floor. Here's our back. You can see the neighbors have solar panels. Here's the large penthouse addition, and this one is also a 2-story penthouse addition on Bergen Street. Here it is again from Bergen Street. This is for landmarks. We're proposing to restore the facade, the front facade. So we're doing historic doors and keeping with the language of the building, repairing the cast iron work. And then this also is for landmarks. I don't believe you are concerned with this, but these are the neighbors' doors. These are the reclaimed doors we're hoping landmarks approves. Again, the front and repairs to the cast iron work. So here is the back. So this is the existing 1-story addition. We're proposing to keep the brick, but extend the windows to be openings, to walk into the new addition, which is here on the right. So it's a ground floor with a sliding glass door, and then a pushed back first floor with a balcony and stairs down to the garden. We wanted to clad it in metal panels that are in a soft green, a simple railing in aluminum with mesh, and the sliding doors. The roof will be sedum. So off the master bedroom, they'll be looking at a green roof. And here it is in context with the neighbors. So we're more or less the same height as the neighbors extension. And this is, the 1-story addition on the other side. This is the existing section with the 1-story, and then the proposed. Here is the bulk, the addition of the new bulk. And this is a rough sketch of a perspective rendering. And then you can see that we still have a 63-foot rear yard with the new addition. So a big yard for Brooklyn. And then here is removal of the addition, existing addition, and then adding the den below the living room with the balcony and the stairs down. Second floor, where this would be the roof, and this is a skylight down into the living room. And that's the proposal.
Thank you. Any questions, audience?
We do have a question.
Sure.
Are the new additions, are they new additions or extensions that were part of the original construction?
No, they're new additions. We're demolishing the old extension, proposing to.
May I clarify that? My
Yes,
question?
please.
Okay. You were using the term additions for the surrounding neighbors. And so I was wondering, were those new additions or were they extensions from the original construction?
The house to our left this appears to be original or nearly original, this two-story piece. All the others are later additions.
None of the other ones were part of the original construction of the home?
Not to my knowledge. They all look, as you can see here, these all look like they were kind of illegally built, and these over here as well. This one seems to be most likely to be an original, but our house doesn't have it, and every house, I think it's about 7 houses that are identical. None of them have this two-story addition, so perhaps it is not original, but it is quite old.
Raise your hand. But you're not sure, so you don't have any documents on
The neighboring
any
buildings?
former records showing exactly what was original and what was added on?
On the neighboring buildings?
Yeah.
I don't have any documentation on when those pieces were added, but with the exception of this one, they're not consistent with the way the townhouses were typically built. A one-story addition it's more likely to have this type of addition where there are windows, in the parlor to get natural light into them, but this would be service spaces.
Well, that's your opinion. I would think we would need something concrete about those.
Then about the neighboring, when the
Yeah.
additions were added to the neighboring
Right.
buildings? For the entire block or?
Well, for whatever you're presenting.
Well, I'm presenting our house in context.
Right, in context with the other ones. I think your point of presenting that is to show that others have extensions and, that you putting in your extension is pretty much like what everybody else did, but we don't know if they did those extensions after the building of the home or they were there already. So usually there's some documentation, some photos, something that will show what the existing backyards were when those homes were built.
Well, they're tax photos of the fronts of the buildings. I'd have to go through the archives of all the adjacent buildings and see if there were permits issued. I can tell you that ours is clearly an add-on, and it's not part of it's not woven into the fabric of the main house at all. And the adjacent neighbor to the right appears to be the same.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
you.
Collins. Thank you. Up next would be Gibb and then James Ellis. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My question relates to the materials used for the construction of the facades of the rear yard addition. First, I'm wondering that the color that you've chosen for that Sheffield steel is, it's kind of an unusual color to find in the donut of a Brooklyn block, a brownstone Brooklyn block. What was the thought about that? They do make that material in other colors like rust and brown and charcoal that might be a little bit less eye-popping, in the backyard for the neighbors. And second part of the question is, what's the what's the facade of the party wall on each side?
Those are stucco. White or warm white stucco on masonry, CMU.
Okay.
The color is based on the client's desire to blend in with the garden. They have a lot of plans for gardening. They wanted to, and I agreed with them. I felt that the green would minimize its impact because it would blend in with its landscape. But they're open to colors if someone hasn't, is adverse to the green. They're open to all the other colors. There are several from the Sheffield that we like. We want to avoid the trend of everything being black and gray everywhere. They don't want a drab house. They have a young family. They want it to be a lively, youthful experience. And it seems to us this would be very pleasant for neighbors to look at, especially in the context of a garden and the greenery on the roof that you'll see minimally unless you're on a higher level of your house.
And there's another question, I'm sorry, that just popped up in the chat, which also is one I had, which is, why did you choose to enclose the bottom of the stair in that vertical seam metal as well? That makes that really kind of adds to the bulk of the structure you're proposing.
Because we were wanting to have storage for the lawnmower and not drag it through the house. They're going to have lawn. The intention is to have lawn, and also the gardening tools.
Okay, so you're putting a storage shed under there
rather than proposing a shed somewhere else on the property. We want to just leave the garden open. So yeah, we'd like to have storage. And a hose. There would be a hose bib in it. We want to keep the garden free of all of that.
Yeah, no, I get it. It does kind of add to the bulk of that structure, right? Yeah, I understand.
We could propose pushing it back, a foot maybe, so that the stair is partially cantilevered. That reseating it may make its impact less. It's very hard to do nice finishes in the house if they have to drag a lawnmower through it,
Familiar with the problem.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, James?
Hi, thank you, Ms. Weatherspoon. Question about, just to remind me, I may have missed this at the top of your presentation, but this is a single-family home and will continue to be used as
Yes,
such? Are there plans to subdivide the building into other units?
No, it's a house. It's a single house, single-family house.
And this is, I guess, for our chair, just to clarify, there's other work being done on this as a part of this project as well, especially on the front facade, but today's presentation and any motion made is based on the rear facade work that we're being asked to make a recommendation on. Is that correct, Madam Chair?
Correct, Mr. Ellison. Thank you for joining us.
You got it. Thank you. I'll hold on any other questions for now.
We also had a question. If this has been presented to Prospect Heights and if they approved it?
No, it hasn't been presented to Prospect Heights.
Okay.
In fact, I'm sorry, I'll jump in here. You did in fact send us the plans, or somebody sent us the plans. So we did have a chance to look at it. We have some draft thoughts on it. I'll actually probably leave Mary to Ms. Shuford to explain what they are. But yes, we have seen it, and we'll be planning to testify at the LPC hearing.
Ms. Shuford, did you have a question that you wanted to, or a comment?
Well, I think Gib has kind of covered our question was about the the use of the metal cladding material and the green color on the back, which seemed rather out of context. And we were, we did think that the material itself might be mitigated if the color were a softer, more contextual color, a red, a brick color, or something that was more consistent with what is used in the back. And the other question was what the material on the party walls was going to be, and that question has been answered.
Thank you. Kathy, same thing with you regarding the brick?
Yes, I mean, thank you. I've been listening to the presentation. I mean, the client clearly has chosen something else, but it seems that if we were being contextual, it would be a brick rear addition, but that I've been listening to the conversation, so I appreciate all the information shared. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, Carrie Tan, did you have a question? I see your hand.
I'm still wondering why half the people in this meeting can't seem to chat. And I'm hoping whoever is the host will check the assign privileges option under the participant menu item, because I think that might fix the problem.
Okay, well, I know that you've been heard, so hopefully they can do that.
All right, now, Ms. Weatherspoon, do we have more questions on this item? If not, should we call for a vote on it at this point, a motion and a vote?
Well, I just want to, being that there are some issues, I just want to ask if anyone has a question that it can just speak now.
I have a question.
Who is this, please?
Sorry, this is the presenter, Graydon.
Oh, hi. Okay.
Hi. As I said, the clients are open to color, other colors if green and the idea of a blending with the garden is not favorable. Do we have to go with this terracotta color that you see so much of back here? It just seems like a missed opportunity to get away from this idea that we're trying to pretend it's brick, I mean, the house right now has yellow brick, a fire engine red door, and blue trim. And then the neighbor has this bright orange sidewall facing us. So there's a lot going on back here that, all the new stuff has this terracotta, it seems like, but it wouldn't be our first choice. We'll do what you want, but it wouldn't. I'm just wondering if there are other colors that would be less controversial than a patina green, which is very soft and we think pleasant.
This is Mary Schufer. What color are you planning to leave the back of the house? Are you keeping it the green?
But no, we want if budget permits, we want to take the paint off. We want to take the paint off and just expose the brick.
Okay, thanks everyone. James Ellis.
Thank you, Ms. Weatherspoon. I'm prepared to make a motion, but preemptively, I'd like to hear maybe from my committee members on this. Would we feel comfortable making a motion supporting this project, but also expressing reservations for color and material? Or do we feel better or more comfortable making a motion that's more discreet in asking for specifics in that realm? I am of the ilk and of the impression that it matters not to me so much, but I want to consider the full committee and the discussion that we've had so far. So I guess asking any of our committee members on this before I were to form a motion, if you would feel comfortable if I were to do so with the explicit language saying that we express reservations about the color of the metal material.
James, that would be fine.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. I have one question that I need to have answered before we proceed with your recommendations. Mr. Graydon, I have questioned you privately and I put the same question out publicly. Can you give your full name and your relationship to the applicant?
Sure. Graydon Yarrick. I'm the architect for the applicant. Graydon Yarrick Architects.
And spell the last name for me, please.
Sure. Yearick.
Thank you. And you're a registered architect for
Indeed.
the property owner.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Ellis,
Yes.
please proceed.
Well, it's just a question to our committee members. I guess maybe Peter has a response he wants to.
Yeah, this is Peter Crashes, committee member. I just note that Kathy Island put a motion into the chat supporting the application as it came in, and I've seconded it.
Well, James is already on the floor with that, Peter. So
Was that
Miss Island and Mr. Crashes, I will, since I had the floor to do so, I'm of the like mind to follow suit with what you're suggesting. I just wanted to hear some feedback and I didn't see that in the chat. So with that being noted, I'm prepared to make a motion to support this application as presented.
Is there a second?
Second, this is Kathy Island, second.
Thank you. Ms. Weatherspoon, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Albert Appleton,
Yes, I support.
Princess Ben James.
Yes.
Thank you. John Buckles, Robert Callahan,
Yes.
Janet Collins,
No.
Nora Daniel,
Yes.
James Ellis,
Yes.
Kevin Farley, Najani Granville, Najani Granville.
Can you hear me?
Now I can. What's your vote? If you can manage, could you put it in the chat? Kathy
Okay.
Isley?
Yes.
Thank you. Suzima Jordan? Peter Crashes?
Yes.
Sarah Lazor?
Yes.
Shari Norton? Bior Ortiz?
Abstain.
Robert Puka?
Yes.
Adam Sachs? Ethel Tyus?
Yes.
Gib Vaconi?
No.
Yrsa Weatherspoon? Yes. Sharon Wedderburn? Elaine Weinstein?
Sharon Wedderburn says yes.
Thank you. Elaine Weinstein?
Yes.
Deborah Young?
Abstain.
Okay. Just give me one moment. I just need to chat, look in the chat.
Okay, thank you. I missed the vote on Crassus Lazar. Mr. Crassus?
Ms. Lazor said yes.
Yes. And Mr. Crassus said yes as well?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have $13 yeses.
I get
2
14. I don't know why I get 14.
2 abstentions. I'm sorry, 3 abstentions and 2 noes.
Okay, so the motion passes, and this recommendation will go to the full board from the Land Use Committee next Thursday. And the link will be on the full board, on the meeting agenda on the board's website. So, Mr. Graydon, I hope you could make yourself available in case there are questions from the board members who are not part of this committee. And if you would also tell us what your date is to present to LPC.
That is the 20, I believe it's the, let's see here. The end of, oh, it's on the 20th,
For April.
of this month, of April.
Okay, what's your LPC number?
I'm sorry, I don't know that right now. I can email you that.
Okay, it's not on your materials. That's why I ask. Usually people put it on their materials.
I see.
Thank you.
I'll
Thank
email you. Thank you.
Okay. So next Thursday, about the same time. Okay, and the link is on, will be in the calendar on the Board 8 website. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. So thank you all for being attentive. We're going to move on to the next action item, which is a LPC application for certificate of appropriateness for 120 Underhill Avenue, another rear yard enlargement in the Prospect Heights Historic District. And I'm asking now for that representative to come forward and give their name and relationship and present their materials.
Hi, my name is Terrence Hairston, Terrence Hairston Architect, and I am the architect for the owner client of 120 Underhill Avenue.
Caius, can I ask one question?
Yes, hi, Richard LaBelle, how are you?
Hello, good to see you, Ethel. The question is the community board adhering to the agenda that had previously been put out? Because I'm just curious. I know that we were number 3. I'm just curious.
Yes, I mentioned at the beginning that we were going to do the action item first and then come around. I'm sorry for you having to wait, but these action items are going to be dealt with first, and then we'll come back around to the discussion items, okay?
Excellent, thank you.
So this is 120 Underhill Avenue.
Yes, so I'm sharing the screen.
Okay, just want to mention, as I may have done before, we're looking at 25 minutes for a presentation and then 5 minutes or so for Q&A at the end. And then we're going to move on to the next item, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
So this is a legal two-family brownstone at 120 Underhill Avenue, which is near the corner of Underhill Avenue and Prospect Place. So what we're proposing to do is a rear yard enlargement of only the parlor floor. We're renovating the parlor floor. We'll do a rear yard enlargement to the maximum area that we're allowed to. So basically that's 13 feet back. And then we're retaining that 30-foot rear yard, and also what we're running up against there is the lot coverage by zoning. So we're adding roughly 200 square feet to the parlor floor. And on this block, there have been a few other rear yard additions, mostly on Underhill, a few on Underhill, mostly on Park Place. So our building is located in the corner here. We're actually a 4-story brownstone surrounded on the west side, or on the north side, by a 5-story apartment building and adjacent to another 5-story apartment building. So we're a 4-story building sort of tucked into the corner of the donut. And what we're doing is we're adding in blue, that's the enlarged area with a 10-foot deck on the back. There are no proposed changes to the front. We're going to do a window replacement on the front and the back, but other than that, there are no proposed changes there. So our existing ground level plan shows, and this is a garden apartment that's rented out. It's a separate unit. There's a shed on the back of the building that was built at a later date, but probably prior to the zoning resolution. And a lot of these houses on this block have these sheds. So we're going to shift this over slightly. It's actually quite close to the neighbor's yard. We're going to shift it over slightly and build on top of that. Our second floor enlargement includes replacing, there's a stucco oriel at the back of the house, bay windows. And these bay windows actually have some landmark significant features in stained glass, which we're going to retain. And we've been going back and forth with landmarks over these issues. And they've kind of come to an agreement that if we retain the bay windows, that'll probably be in our favor to get approval. Also, there's precedent set for removing the oriel. A couple of houses on the block have done so already successfully. So rear elevation existing. So we have on the garden level our storage unit shed, which we're shifting over slightly, and then the oriel bay window, which we're proposing to be removed. At that level, we will replace that with sliding glass doors, and the enclosure will be, the enlargement will be brick to match existing brick. This is painted brick, so we'll just match the painted brick. The garden level will be open with the shed shifted over, and the columns will be clad in a brick to match the rest of the house. For the section, we're removing the bay window section and enlarging, and the enlargement here is on the parlor floor with the new deck and the stair. There's an existing deck on the parlor floor which will be demolished, and so we're pushing all of that back. Photos. This is close to the corner. It's surrounded by taller buildings. So we have an apartment building that's 5 stories that's an adjacent neighbor. And then around the corner on, I think this is Prospect Place, there is an open lot there for parking behind that apartment building. So there is some vision from this angle, at an oblique angle, that you can see a portion of the deck. In order to see that, you would really need to be quite close. And then sort of from this angle, you'd be able to see the back of the deck here. And then some of the neighbors' buildings. So it's only at an oblique angle where this would be visible. You wouldn't be able to see any of the enlargement from the street, just the deck. And then inside, the feature that we've discussed with landmarks are the oriel bay windows, but a couple of precedents further down the block, I think it's 346, where it's been removed, and another one adjacent. So that is what we're proposing, removal of that and enlargement of the rear yard. This is the existing bay window oriel that's proposed for removal, and then the sort of the neighbor's view down the block. Any questions?
Questions?
Hi, this is Gib. I have a question.
Sure.
Please, Gib.
Could you just clarify your comments about the oriel window and the stained glass? I heard you say at one point you were looking to preserve them, and then I heard you talk about how other houses had removed them. And your plan calls for them to be removed. So then you mentioned you're talking to LPC about this. So could you just clarify what you're...
Well, we have been going back and forth with LPC, and it's been helpful and moving forward. What we plan on preserving are the stained glass windows. So those are the 3 windows above the doors and the other windows at the bay. And these are the sort of historically significant features. They're not all stained glass. It's just the sort of the upper windows that are.
Okay.
So we would save these and include these into the enlargement, sort of relocation.
Okay, I understand. Second question I had is, in your plans, it looks like at the 3rd floor, you're doing a window to door conversion, and it looks like you're reducing the size of that opening with the door that's going in to get out onto the terrace. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. So on the rear elevation, we're proposing to put it, because we're putting a terrace on top of the enlarged room. So we are proposing to remove the center window and to put a door in here for
Okay,
access to the terrace.
I get that, but why reduce the size of the opening?
We're not reducing the size of the opening. I don't know if that's reading that way, but that is not what we're proposing.
Right, because you're drawing there. Okay, so you won't be reducing the size of the opening.
No,
then.
no, the
Okay.
opening will stay the same.
The drawing shows something that looks like an extra course of brick below that vaulted brick.
Yeah, I think that's just the way the drawing reads, but no, that's not correct. So I'll have to go back and look at that. But that is not what we're proposing to do.
Okay, and then I have one last thing I want to ask you about this project, and this is I think kind of the most consequential question. Are you at all concerned about DOB not approving this because of circulation requirements? I mean, you're building a full coverage extension over the tenant apartment's bedroom that's 13 feet deep, plus a deck after that, when I think you can only go out 8 feet off the back wall, shading those tenant windows.
Well, we've done this before on other projects and haven't run into an issue with it. I have heard that be the case in the past, but I've done 10 to 15 feet additions on the back over tenant apartments, and they were approved. So I don't think we're going to have an issue with DOB at that.
I think you could. I definitely think you could have an issue with that. I think 8 feet is the code. You may get a plan examiner that passes it, but I think I think you could run into an issue. And I'm speaking as someone who's had to deal with DOB and this very issue in building a deck on my own house. But I want to.
But in that case, well, the deck. Well, if we need to, lower the size, we will. But
it's not the deck. The extension itself is 13 feet over those windows. I mean, those windows are not going to ever get sunlight. And you have to have circulation because that's livable space. Now, this isn't a landmarks issue, but yeah, anyway, I just wanted to ask if you were concerned about that. This project, just I guess from the just for information here, it looks to us like you're looking to max the remaining FAR, and that's why you're building this second floor addition on columns.
Yes.
So you don't have to have floor area at the bottom, but that does produce a bulk in the rear that's really unusual. I mean, I can't think of any building in the Prospect Heights Historic District that looks this way. And I'm not sure that I'm not sure you'll get approved. And if you don't, I guess what I would suggest is you consider making this a two-story addition that is a shorter two-story, not as deep. So
well, we did consider that. That was actually one of our original sort of proposals or schemes, was to do a two-story and then a smaller one on the ground floor and a larger one on the parlor level. But the owner's wish is to maximize their floor area on the parlor level.
Right, understood. I think from a historic district perspective, to see buildings along Underhill Avenue, which has a slightly less, the lots are less deep than in other parts of the district, and so the floor area is a little tighter. So to see them maximize floor area this way could lead to a lot of, buildings that are kind of, I mean,
well, this building is a little bit unique. This is a little bit unique in part because it's a slightly narrower lot. It's a 1710, it's not a 20-foot. And also has a large bay in the front, which adds to the floor area. So there's only so much we can do, and it's not quite as much as what another house down the block might be able to do.
Yeah, I see that, but I'm not sold on using the bulk that way. I think it will look really out of context in the backyard.
Well, I mean, there's a existing shed which kind of covers some of that, so it sits on top of that, and that extends. The shed and the extension are the same extent, so they kind of end in the same place.
Okay, I understand. It doesn't really change the way I think it would be experienced by people looking at it in the back. Okay, that's all. That's all I have.
Do you have any renderings of what Gib is talking about in the back? Can you show us pictures or any type of renderings?
Well, what we have, all we have here is just this elevation here. So this is the shed, and then we have our deck that's projected over that, and in our extension that's projected over that, and columns on the side. So this is the sort of volume that the new enlargement will sit on top of.
Ms. Tyus?
I think we've heard a fulsome explanation on the owner's plans for 120 Underhill Avenue by the registered architect, Mr. Hairston. Unless there are other questions, I would ask for a motion from the committee members on this proposal.
I'll make a motion that the committee recommend withholding support on the reorganization of the bulk, and so we can have a full two-story extension of lesser depth without the need to use columns to support the parlor floor.
I'd like to second that.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Ms. Witherspoon, I ask you to call the roll on this item.
Sure.
To withhold support on the reorganization of the bulk so that columns would not be required to support the addition. And I think we need to specify that Mr. Coney, what should we add there about the light and air?
Well, that's really DOB, so I don't think we have to get into that for the purposes of the certificate of appropriateness. I would just say, withhold support pending a reorganization of the new bulk such that it results in a two-story addition of lesser depth that does not require the support of columns.
Yeah. No requirement for support of columns. So we have that in a second from Ms. Collins. So if Ms. Witherspoon would call the roll on that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Albert Appleton?
Yes.
Princess Ben James?
Yes.
Robert Callahan?
Abstain.
Janet Collins?
Yes.
I'm sorry, did we miss Mr. Buchholz?
He's not here today.
Okay, just want to double check. You never know when people show up. And Mr. Callahan is, what was your vote, Mr. Callahan?
Abstention.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Nora Daniel? Sorry? Nora Daniel?
Yes.
James Ellis?
Yes.
Kevin Farley? Najani Granville? Najani Granville? You can place it in the chat, Ms. Granville. Kathy Iceland?
Abstain.
Ms. Jordan? Peter Crashes?
Abstain.
Sarah Lazar?
Abstain.
Fior Ortiz?
Yes.
Robert Puka? Was that a yes, Mr. Puka?
Yes.
Great. Ethel Tyus? Ethel
And get
Tyus,
Yes.
Gib Vaconi,
Yes.
Yrsa Weatherspoon, yes. Sharon Wedderburn,
Yes.
Elaine Weinstein,
Yes.
Deborah Young.
Yes.
13 yeses, 4 abstentions. The motion passes to withhold support.
Thank you very much, Ms. Weatherspoon. And this will go to the full board next Thursday. That announcement and link will be on the community board's website on the calendar. And I would advise the proponent to attend in case there any additional questions. Probably not. Do you have a date, Mr. Hairston, for LPC?
We don't have a date yet. We don't have a date yet.
Okay, so would you want to come back to the committee in May on this issue?
Yes.
Okay, so then we won't take it to the full board next Thursday. We'll look for you in May.
Okay.
All right.
Ms. Tyus?
Yes.
Mr. Pariente is inquiring as to why there was not a vote on his project this evening.
Well, we listed it as a preliminary discussion. And he hasn't started ULURP as far as I can tell.
Okay. Thank you.
Is he still with us?
Well, he,
Yes, I am.
Yep,
Okay.
there you go.
When do you plan to start ULURP?
I mean, I believe we had started it already. The email we had gotten for the presentation today was to hold the vote, then send it to the full board. If you'd like us to come back, we can come back and then go to the full board next month. But I believe we had started ULURP.
Well, Elliot, hi, Chair Tice, it's Richard Lobel. Just as a formal matter, we're not in formal ULURP hearings. I think there was just a discussion whether or not the community board would take the opportunity to vote prior to ULURP, and then essentially mirror that answer when we got to ULURP. But so Ellie's just talking about that, but we have not received formal certification to ULURP yet.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. We are looking forward to continuing a dialogue with Mr. Pariente, and he's chosen a good representative. Thank you both for coming back. I think this is the third time, correct? And we'll see you again.
Last time I let you guys go to dinner, so second time.
True. This is why you were first on the agenda tonight. So let's just be clear. When we see you again, you will have been certified. Is that the plan?
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay. All right. Thank you again. And we'll see you certified at at the meeting when you choose to come in and present for a vote on your ULURP process, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, good. All right, so now we're done with 120 Underhill Avenue, and the next item is also a discussion item, 870, 888 Atlantic Avenue, which we will now hear their zoning change application. We will do another 20 minutes with following 5 or 10 minutes for Q&A. And who is speaking for 870, 888 Atlantic Avenue?
So I'm going to be leading the presentation, Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel.
Hi, Richard Lobel again. Thank you. Go ahead.
Sure. So thanks for hearing us this morning. Again, Richard Lobel to discuss the 870 to 888 Atlantic Avenue rezoning. To quickly introduce the project team, I'm here with Dan Baton from my office. Sandy Hornick is also on the phone. Sandy is a land use consultant to our office, formerly was director of zoning at city planning and had a decades-long career there. So Sandy's here to talk about some of the bulk issues should that question arise. We're here with Yoel Teitelbaum, who is the applicant for the rezoning. Noah Bernstein is here from AKRF. He's a technical director there and can discuss environmental aspects. And of course, Nick Liberis is here from Archimera. He's a project architect and will be presenting the presentation that's currently on the screen. Just to note, we are pre-ULURP right now, and this is really an introductory meeting with the committee. We're very thankful that the Land Use Committee has chosen to have us in for a very, very brief presentation. And we're really here to get some ideas and to talk a little bit about our proposal, which, to summarize, is a rezoning. It is a C63A rezoning from an existing M11. This is in line with the other rezoning proposal that was introduced earlier this evening. There is also a text amendment to require mandatory inclusionary housing, as well as two other actions. One is a text amendment to allow for a 20-foot wide sidewalk here in front of the building, and another is a special permit to reduce parking. So I'm going to briefly run through in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes just the basics of the actual rezoning actions, and then Nick's going to take over with a project discussion. In order to keep the presentation as brief as possible, we're going to move this along and then answer any specific questions that are raised by the committee, with the understanding that we will indeed be coming back, at a minimum for our ULURP hearings, if not more, and we're looking forward to working with the community board. So you can see in front of you the area that is subject to the rezoning. There's roughly 10 full or portions of 10 lots. Those are currently zoned M11. And as you can see in red, the project area would be, a roughly 20,000 square foot area currently populated by low-rise mixed-use buildings. And so the C63 would permit the development in line with the plans that Nick will introduce. So you can see, as other applications before have come in, this is on Atlantic Avenue. Atlantic Avenue is a deep 120-foot wide street in this area. Obviously, this area being very central to transportation. In fact, one of the most transit-rich areas in the city is seen as being appropriate by the applicant team in city planning, as well as pursuant to the discussion of the community board, as being appropriate for a step up in density here. And so the proposal is for the C63A. Next slide. So this is the proposed rezoning. You can see the zoning map to the left is the existing zoning district with the M11 district, and to the right includes the C63A. Next slide.
Okay, the next slide, I believe, is this.
Okay.
These were, yeah.
Great. So I think with that, we would switch over to Nick, who's going to be discussing the project, talking about some of the architectural features. Importantly here, the R98, the C63 to R98 equivalent district is one which permits, development on the site, which is both allows for maximizing the affordable units on the site, which I know is a goal of the community board, as well as some architectural flexibility, which has enabled Nick to do some really interesting things with the design. So Nick, with that, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Richard. So when we first got this site, this was a kind of an oddity because it's a long block. We're asking for some more density. So this is something DCP brought up immediately, and thankfully there are places all over the city where this is very very clearly a thing. So you have places like the Upper West Side, West 72nd Street. You have 23rd Street across the whole way, and you have places that are in downtown Brooklyn that also show this type of morphology, where you have a wide street which is long, but then you have a lot of density on it. Now these are typically really close to transportation centers, which this site is, and this is a mapping of all of the areas that are in downtown Brooklyn where there are similar conditions. Now, these areas, they're not the most dense parts of downtown Brooklyn. These are simply areas that have wider streets that are on these long blocks. So once we showed this to city planning, what they quickly decided was that there would be, there would have to be some sort of finer massaging of what this zone could be. So we started looking at these adjacent areas, and we saw that there was a precedent for having slightly higher bulk across from an R7, which is what we're proposing over here. And the thing that really took us a lot of examination to kind of understand was the current setup is predicated on having Vanderbilt as the main avenue where there's a zoning change. And having myself been like a very, very dedicated Brooklyn bicyclist, for over 10 years, I've been up and down Vanderbilt like thousands of times probably. It was something that kind of struck me at some gut level as being a little bit off, because I knew that the next avenue over, which was Washington, was something that really felt like a much more substantial demarcation. So when we went and we looked, what we saw was that Vanderbilt, was obviously indeed, while it was a wide street, it seemed that the real demarcation happened on the next block over, which was Washington. So Washington comes down and then bifurcates over here around a little pocket park. And what you end up with is something which is almost twice as wide as the Vanderbilt strip. So the Vanderbilt strip is also something which is fully fleshed out. It's very, very populated with all this commercial activity. Even 2 or 3 blocks further north, and all the way actually to the Navy Yard. There's a lot of commercial stuff happening. So it didn't seem like something which was a boundary condition. It was something which was definitely well within something which was already commercial in spirit. So this led to many discussions with Sandy, who will be speaking later, and with city planning. And so what we figured out was that the thing that made the most sense for the land use rationale pointed towards this type of bulk. So there's a couple of reasons for that. One, obviously the density is supported by the transportation infrastructure, by the size of Atlantic Avenue. But the other benefit was that with this extra height, we get some ability to do some more facade articulation in a way which lets you graciously step back, which lets you play certain formal games, which are really very, very respectful to the street. Principally, we could lower the base height down to about 75 feet over the main part of it over here. And what that does is that it creates something that from the avenue makes a much more pedestrian-friendly experience. So at this point, we decided to meet Miss Cumbo. So we went to meet her and we showed her this, and this was something that she was very much excited by, and she was very supportive of it. At the time, we had talked about the M Crown uses and how we were working with Gibb and Ethel to kind of curate this in the way that they've so thoughtfully set out for the neighborhood. And as we all know, she's a fan of public art. So what she asked me to look at was the monumental arches going into the Brooklyn Public Library branch, which is off of Grand Army Plaza. So what we saw when we looked there was, obviously the relief of these and the way that they monumentally frame the entrances. And it led to a formal device, which is a frame for a kind of like a vitrine of sorts, which could be used to house all sorts of art, like many different kinds of media have been contemplated. There could be video art, there could be very many different types of sculpture. And the thought was that this would be something which would add tremendously to to the street presence of this building. And you can see them over here. So right now they're just being shown as something which is kind of placeholder, because we didn't at that point have an understanding at this point either really of what this art could be. And it's only in more recent conversations with Ms. Cumbo that she suggested a couple of things. So she's not a fan of this plop art, like type of public sculpture. And, she very sensitively recommended, that we consider the heights of these things, vis-a-vis the street level. And, we were able to communicate to her that, we had, and that really these are set up as these public art installations that can be curated much in the way that M Crown is curated. On the in of itself, you have this neighborhood, where you guys are very, very sensitively, picking and choosing all these different uses in a way, that hopefully the rest of the city sees and emulates. And, this could be something else which kind of, adds a little bit of spice to it. Just something to make this more of a like a publicly pleasant, avenue as it develops into a more like developed maturity. So the building itself is 17 stories. We have ground floor commercial. We have some ground floor space which has been dedicated to a contemplated M Crown use, and then more space in the cellar for that same use or for possibly some different use. We have some parking. We are seeking out a complete parking waiver. But again, as with the last building that we presented, we are having some parking because in a building of this size, market forces dictate that you should provide some parking both for the retail and also for the residential portions.
Okay, Dick, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
For some reason, I don't recall, excuse me, getting any kind of formal presentation on this proposal.
I had sent the plans to the link last week.
I can email it to you now, Ethel, if you'd like.
Okay, is there a way you can post the link in the chat?
Yes. You know what? Let me do this.
Excuse me.
And if anybody judges me from my desktop, you're 100% correct if you see it. So give me one sec, sir. Oh, get it off the shelf anyway. Okay. Here we go. One. Okay, and I'm going to leave out Rich's slides because it's just going to be much easier to do it this way. So back to the presentation. So we have 17 stories. We have 16 stories residential. We have the ground floor commercial. There's a little bit of parking, but not much. This was just a boring diagram for the dormers, just to show city planning how the dormers got set up. So the building plans, this is the cellar floor where we're showing the parking. These shaded areas are the M Crown programs. This portion in the front over here is contemplated as being mechanical and also maybe some amending to the building if it fits. You can see the ground floor has this big retail area and also some M Crown. The residential use is biased all the way to the west side of the site, closest to Vanderbilt. DCP with all of these Atlantic Avenue projects is asking for the 20-foot sidewalk. They really have a vision for this, for this area to turn into a, very robust, like pedestrian promenade. So think of Broadway in the 60s, to the 90s, where you have a nice wide sidewalk. You have the center median, so that's something that we've been thinking about all along. Which you can see from these renderings here. So, the thought is that as these buildings come up and as this becomes more and more developed, you want to set up something which, which invites pedestrians to come, to linger, to have a pleasant experience on the street. So that's really what drives this entire design. So you can see here looking west. All the way towards downtown Brooklyn. These are the future buildings which are in process right now, a little bit further west down the street. You can see the center median. Again, as I was writing in that chat before, this is stuff that you can take up with DOT, that you can and should take up with DOT. And I'd be more than happy to make an introduction to the people that can get the process started, because it does take a lot of community involvement, and unfortunately the zoning doesn't really let you mix that stuff in. But this road. So there's a few roads actually coming out of Prospect Park. This being one of them that had been contemplated as these Houseman style like boulevards, and they were properly thought of as being parkways. So there's Empire Boulevard. There's a few boulevards coming into Prospect Park. Well, I mean, obviously there's Flatbush once you get past past Atlantic. But there's a couple of not a couple. I think there's 7 or 8 of them coming in and out of the park that have been contemplated as these parkways, and they were never fleshed out. They were never fully built. There were various financial crashes, world wars, etc., that prevented this from happening. But what you have in this neighborhood now is something which has the bones to support this type of stuff. It would be a shame if it didn't happen in the next few years, or let's say in the next decade. So you can see that the project has been conceived as something, which is part of this context, of a building with a nice street presence, sitting on a grand avenue. And let me see. So this is the nighttime shot showing these art display components. These were some of the material references. We were looking at stuff that was a little bit more monolithic. We felt that the scale of the building, demanded something which felt less piecemeal. We are very taken with the facade, the facade of the smaller tower portion of that 1 South First building, which is on the water to the south of the Domino development. And as you can see here, there's a very pleasing play that you can make with such a facade panel with very little variation. You can get a lot of expression across the facade. We're looking at some more granulated materials. This like terrazzo style, like Palladiana, like type of crushed marble, which you could also mix with something which is a little bit more monumental to give that street experience some more texture from the facade material. We had also contemplated putting a bunch of plantings in there. We're very much we are known for doing green roofs. We're known for doing a lot of plantings on our buildings. We have experience with integrating this stuff into the buildings, and it's something that we thought would be very, very much appropriate here. Joel agreed and has been very, very supportive of this. This is a slide that I showed you before. And these are some of the community facility concepts. Joel recently, and Joel can speak to this more, but he has reached out to a couple of children's schools, and he thought that to make a school and propose that as the M-Crown use would be something which could be, consonant with the M-Crown goals for the area. We're always talking about the M-Crown with your plight. Obviously, city planning, doesn't, well, not even city planning. I mean, the zoning framework, it's difficult to contemplate the uses, but we've all, like, I know I speak for Rich and also Faya, and we are very, very taken with how you guys are, choosing to curate this as a neighborhood, and it's really heartening to see this just as an expression of this self-governance. So it's an honor. It's an honor to be trying to fit into this framework. This is a slide which shows some of the green building componentry. Again, certain local laws that were passed in 2019 compel everybody now to be thinking about this stuff seriously, or else you'll be fined very, very heavily starting around 2023. So again, this is not something which is optional anymore. So we have super insulation, we have triple glazed panels, we have a lot of green roof, and this is the end of my presentation. I'm going to kick it back to Rich. And after seeing, I was feeling very, very good about this presentation until I saw Gib get super critical about those other projects. I'm hoping he doesn't rip into us for anything here. But thank you for your time. And Rich, please take it away.
Thanks, Nick. So, Ethel, in the interest of time and understanding that we've been around for close to 20 minutes, I think we would be happy to answer any questions. The bulk that's presented is, is C63A. We understand the community board's discussion to date. We also understand the nature of the applications which have come to the community board in the recent weeks. So we're happy to discuss any of the specifics, but I did think it'd probably be more productive to just open it up to you and the board, so as to, you know, address some specifics and not overrun our time.
Thank you. I did go back and look at a send from through Office 365 a couple of days ago, and unfortunately, I don't see where this made it into the distribution for tonight's meeting. So I apologize to the audience members, our community members and committee members, for not having this in your hands so you could make the most of what was presented tonight. I know that Ms. Weatherspoon will be able to have an orderly walkthrough of the questions that have been put in the chat, but I do want to say that I'm sort of disappointed in the references that were made to guidance provided by DCP rather than the focus on the published mission for the neighborhood rezoning for M-Crown. And I'll ask Ms. Weatherspoon to take questions from the chat at this point.
Well, there's a lot of chat amongst the participants of this meeting. One question stands out, is pretty long, so I'm going to have Peter open it up with his question or comment. Peter?
Sure, I appreciate it, and actually I want to underline what I think a lot of the other elements and the other people in the chat have been saying, that this has nothing to do with M-Crown and with the letter that the Council, Majority Leader Cumbo and Borough President Eric Adams have signed with a specific FAR in it, which is considerably lower. The question I had was for AKRF, who we're in our neighbor in Prospect Heights. We're pretty familiar with AKRF. We know you're ubiquitous everywhere, but you know your projections for Atlantic Yards have failed, and they were so overly optimistic that they bordered on being deceit if they weren't just outright deceit. There's no east-west passageways going from Vanderbilt to 6th Avenue, and that may never be completed. The open space may never be completed, and so when you're pointing to this area being near transit hub, that's the argument that was made for the eastern part of Atlantic Yards 2, which again may never be completed. And so we've in each of these circumstances, with this project, with the project on Vanderbilt that we'll be hearing about next at 840 Atlantic, we hear these are near major transportation hubs. There's good transit here. There's not great transit. The 840 applicant has specifically said you're going to take a bus to the major transit. So this is not a place where people are going to be able to live and walk to Atlantic and Flatbush if they're over 50, over 60. They're not going to choose to do that. So let's hear from AKRF what happened to your projections for Atlantic Yards, and how are people going to be getting to this major transit hub?
So Peter, it's Richard Lobel. So first of all, I think I have to apologize because Noah Bernstein. This was a
question for AKRF.
Understood, Peter. I was going to address that.
Yeah,
so Noah Bernstein, of course. So Noah Bernstein, who was on the phone from AKRF, and you know, we understood that our matter would be on earlier, so he had a conflict at 8:15, so we knew he was going to have to leave at 8:15. So I don't think he's able to address that on the call right now. We're happy to submit in writing to the board, specifically addressing this question. So I thank you for the question, and we can answer that. What I did want to address.
I just want to. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
sure.
Just to point out as well that the head of ESD at the time is now the head of the Department of City Planning. The general counsel of ESD is now also very, very high up in Department of City Planning. And so when we hear Atlantic Yards, when Mr. Liberos, and I hope I pronounced his name correctly, we see pictures of Atlantic Yards completed in this proposal you just presented. And so this is why I think there isn't a real understanding at all of the context with these proposals. You guys aren't taking responsibility for the Department of City Planning. Is not taking responsibility for the context that this project these projects sit within.
Okay, so understanding that there were the environmental piece of that question that we're going to have Peter address offline. I'd ask if Sandy Hornick is still on the call.
I'm here.
Okay, good. So Sandy, and I actually would like Sandy to address a little bit about the density question. Particularly, we understand what was in the CB8 M-Crown resolutions, and we've been over them many times. We understand the discussion with regards to bulk at this, on Atlantic in this area. And we also understood, what the conversations were with the Brooklyn Borough President and with Councilmember Cummo coming into this. Some of the discussions that have happened to date, and obviously this is our first time before the community board in this, so this is an iterative process that we look forward to hashing out. But I think some of the discussion and what Sandy's going to talk about is what our conversation with city planning was about, and why they specifically suggested that we consider an R9A at the site. And Sandy, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Let me just say, by way of background, I'm a former city planning employee for more than 4 decades. I was the director of zoning and strategic planning. I'm one of the fathers of inclusionary housing and contextual zoning policies, both which bear a lot on this rezoning application. And my observation about the M-Crown proposal is actually that Board 8 is actually one of the more progressive boards in the city in are carving out a growth corridor, and one that recognizes the differences between the streets to the south, which are narrower streets and have lower zoning, typically R7A, and Atlantic Avenue, which at 120 feet is actually probably the 3rd widest street in Brooklyn that is not a highway. It's just an extremely unusually wide street, and it does have good transit access. And so there's always this question about, well, how much density should we take? And on the one hand, land use policy is zoning policy, as reflected in land use policy, seeks to protect the brownstone blocks, the R6A blocks. All of those places get protected, but at the same time, the demand for housing needs to go somewhere. And so the question then becomes, do you take the absolute minimum that you can take, or do you need to go more? And what's happened to housing prices in this part of Brooklyn, and I'm a native Brooklynite, and I've lived in Brownstone, Brooklyn for more than 45 years. On my block, housing prices have gone up over 45 times since I moved there. And I think that's representative of what's happened in these neighborhoods in general. And the simple reason for that is housing shortage. More people want to live here, and the marketplace assigns that housing to the people who have the most money. And there's only 2 real answers to that. One is to make the neighborhoods less desirable, so less people want to live there. And the other is to have more housing. And from a land use policy, to try to put that in a place where it will add the most to the neighborhood, and have the least negative consequences. I can't tell you that adding people never has negative consequences, but where do you put them? You put them on the wide street, and as I say, Atlantic is one of the widest streets in the borough, which makes it one of the widest streets in the city. And it's a kind of place that can take taller buildings. And I've been reading some of the chat things. As we look forward, first of all, when I was at city planning, we actually did look at the A and C lines and their capacity constraints, and they weren't really at capacity back when we looked at them. And the MTA had plans, you know, somewhere in their hopper for things that could add capacity to that. And, you know, when I listened to Biden's infrastructure investments, you know, the thing that the MTA could most do is change its 100-plus-year-old signal system to a 21st century one, which will automatically increase the capacity of the system by 8 or 10%. As it happens, we're probably not going to get back to the ridership numbers we had in the past for some time, if ever, because the frequency with which people are going to be going to work every day is probably been changed by this pandemic, and probably in a way that's going to last a very long time. And it doesn't take very many people to not travel in every day to change that. And that has tremendous ramifications, by the way, for how the MTA finances its capital plan. But if the MTA is likely to have less ridership at a time when to finance its plan, since it finances part of it out of the fare box, it's going to need more riders. I'm going to say the same thing is true of retail. Retail has changed. It was changing anyway. In my neighborhood in Park Slope, 20% of the stores are empty. Probably 10% of them were empty before the pandemic. And so it's not just pandemic related, but it's going to be worsened by the fact that more people are now more comfortable doing more of their shopping online. So if you want to have healthy retail streets, the only answer to that is going to be to have more customers. So there are reasons to think that the way you get lively streets and healthy transit and that these integrate with each other is by putting an appropriate level of density here, even if it's more than the initial reaction thought about in the M-Crown proposal. And I would just say that this is not an argument for marching down Atlantic Avenue to Queens and saying everything should be R9A. In fact, there have been zoning applications, and I've worked on a couple of them with Richard to the east of us that are in fact at R8A. And as you get further away from this core, the lower it is. But here, where the prices represent such a strong housing demand, it's really important to get as much housing as you can. And when you get more housing, you get proportionally more affordable housing. So that little 1.3 FAR, since the ground floor is non-residential, translates into about 20% more housing and therefore 20% more affordable housing. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Mr. Hornick. You gave a wonderful entree. Richard, you need to this is a keeper you have here. So
Oh, you don't have to tell me twice, Ethel. We're crazy about him.
Okay, so in the background, around the edges, underneath and on top, is the community's desire to do a holistic approach to developing this flat area of one-story garbage lots, vacant lots, junkyards, car washes, et cetera, et cetera. And what that does when it is a concerted effort where everybody's pitching in, including the developers who are hot to trot, you get infrastructure along with all these big buildings. You get new sewers, you get parks, you get schools. That is not coming into the picture the way the community board wants to see it, and the neighbors, the people who live here. So when you get the surrounding infrastructure collapsing because the area is overbuilt without aging infrastructure first being refreshed and replaced and augmented, you build in for problems. I just don't understand why it can't be a concerted effort where the developers, city planning, and the community boards pull the ideas, get the budget, and move ahead. We've been asking for a neighborhood rezoning for many years now. So I'm still concerned that no one's really listening to what the other person is saying. It's a cacophony. I'm sorry. Ms. Weatherspoon, could you take questions from the chat?
Again, we have a lot of discussion amongst the participants on this call. And we just, as far as I can see, don't have any questions specific to what the gentleman has presented here.
This is Kathy Island. I did ask a question quite early on in the presentation that does have something to do with this. You can find it.
It must have gotten buried. Sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
That's okay. I'll try and recreate it. This is Kathy Island. I'm a land use committee member. I asked, we've seen two presentations tonight for very large buildings with the same architect. We also have the presentation at 8:40 on Atlantic Avenue. And there is no mention, as Ethel just said, of schools or parks, green space. And I was wondering if these developers have made any effort to come together with the community board. It sounds like they're all talking to Majority Leader Cumbo, but what is being done about schools and green space? Are the developers even considering this along with DCP? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Nick for a moment to talk a little bit about green space, because I know this is something that he looked at and is of concern to him and the developments he's worked on.
Yeah, so over here, I mean, we're kind of restricted because we have certain lot coverage issues and certain restrictions because of the width of the sidewalk that kind of force us to, to kind of bulk up the building anytime. If you could imagine, so right now, the sidewalks that are on the front of the buildings are about 12, 13 feet wide. So over the course, let's say of 10 stories, like 200 feet wide, 7 feet of width is a lot. So we can't really do much to provide green space beyond the green roofs. So we do have green roofs. For the building occupants, there is green space. And I think the way that city planning has been considering this is that the extra width that they get for the sidewalk is actually de facto, open space in the public realm.
Right.
So
Nick, excuse me,
Sure.
Nick. With all due respect, a sidewalk is not a park, and I'm talking about a much larger issue that regards city planning and developers. That if you think of the thousands of residents that are being added to the neighborhood, these developments and with Atlantic Yards, there is no provision for anybody thinking about parks. And I just want to make that point. It may not be a question that you can answer, and it may not be Majority Leader Cumbo's vision, but it is the residents' concern and the people of this community board district. And I appreciate you trying to answer the question, but green space on top of a building does not provide, parks and recreation for the community. And I think it's a very important point. It's great that the majority leader is interested in murals, but there's a lot of, important other living stuff that we should be considering.
yeah, please excuse me. I thought that this was directed specifically for this project. I didn't understand it was a macroscopic question.
I would just add that, briefly with regards to the discussion about school seats, I know that this has been an issue, obviously having attended some previous hearings and a discussion regarding school seats. I know that the applicant here, that Yoles has spoken to some schools and youth programs coming into the building, specifically, pre-K and youth programs. So although, that doesn't directly address the question of, school seats per se for upper grades, he has kind of talked to, I know to at least several providers who would potentially take space in the building. So as with all these applications, there's environmental review that takes place. And there is, to the extent that there are impacts which can't be mitigated, those are, those have to come out, and there's, you need to basically either mitigate your impacts or it has to demonstrate that's not an issue. So in all the environmental aspects here, including school seats, are ones that were reviewed in the EAS and was determined by city planning to issue a negative declaration in that regard. So, we understand the issue, and obviously, I mean, we've listened to the community board's discussion for a long time with regards to the need for city planning to develop a holistic approach here. This just happens to be an application which has come at this time and which we've discussed fairly thoroughly with the city, and is something that they felt should move forward at this point. So again, I don't think we can solve everyone's problems here that are presented, but we're trying to do what we can as far as our piece.
Madam Chairman, may I make a comment?
Who's this?
Robert Puka.
Robert, thank you.
Madam Chair, may I make a comment or no?
She said yes.
Yes, you
Oh,
may,
okay.
Mr. Puka.
Okay, I just want to make a comment to the attorney, the developer, the architects. Just so there's a massive amount of frustration within the community board and on the community board, because we've been working on an M-Crown vision, a vision of manufacturing, and the borough president signed on to it, Cumbo signed on to it. And now it just seems like developers go straight to city planning, they go straight to the council person, and then the community is approached always last. And then they're presented with these developments after everyone else but us has been consulted. So that's just a general thing. So all these private ULIP applications that are coming in now on Atlantic Avenue, they're not within the vision that the community board has been working on for the last 7-8 years. I mean, I know, I forget your name, is Richard, or the lawyer?
Correct.
You've attended many of those meetings, many over the years. So there's just frustration, and because city planning is just seems to override, and whatever the community council person says overrides whatever the community wants. So that's just just so you know where we're coming from. That's just, we need more green space. We need open space. It's just one thing on top of the other. So I just wanted to state that. Thank you.
I get it. And
May I just agree? I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in again, with Robert, because that was just my point too, in regards to New York City overall. Are we really needing so many more new buildings? We see development like Greenpoint, Williamsburg, everywhere. How many more people are going to move here? Honestly, I'm not against development. It's just the amount, the size, what's going on? Is it more in the developer's interest than the actually New Yorkers' interest? That's how it feels to me.
So if I could just respond to what Robert said. First, I totally understand, Robert. You understand that I've been through this a number of times and have been at the community board for years. That these are the M-Crown resolutions. I totally I've read them a lot. This is the overlay on city planning's framework. I understand. We're here. This is early. We're not in ULIRP yet. I understand it's an iterative process. The last rezoning that was approved by the community board of Pacific and Grand was, I think it was a really beneficial process where we discussed it with the community board and we came up with a solution to a lot of issues that were raised. I think probably just to, some of the comments with regards to density is that when you look at the site and you look at some of these sites on Atlantic Avenue, the issue is not necessarily people coming to the area. The issue is people within the area. The issue is that there's studies from the Furman Center at NYU, which demonstrate that between 2014 and 2018, the population in the area grew by over 13%. That median asking rents went up by over $500 for asking median rents. It's it's something which you either address through zoning or you don't. And I'm not, I understand exactly where the community board sits. I have the resolutions in front of me. I know what you guys have asked for. I think probably what's going on is that to the extent that you've got a building and you have the opportunity to add more units, including affordable units here, it's whether or not the site is able to withstand that density. When Sandy talks about the fact that there are other sites that we rezoned to R8A in Brooklyn, these are on narrow streets on South Portland Avenue. There's other sites that we did which were on Eastern Parkway where the city kind of demonstrated that the bulk there was appropriate. And so here you have Atlantic Avenue, you have a 120-foot wide street. I again want to reiterate, this is not, there's not a vote tonight. We're not asking for a final determination. We're here to get some of this input and talk about ways where potentially we can help not just present, but also to help solve some of the problems. So we're taking all this in. We appreciate the discussion. And Ethel, I appreciate the time we spent on this, but it's good for us to hear it.
I have a couple of more questions. Thank you. Will there be indoor bike parking? Is that part of your plan?
Yes, there is indoor bike parking. We always oversupply because we're seeing more and more. There's two things that people need more of: bike parking and package room space. So this is something that we're constantly doing. Yeah, sure.
Okay, we have another important question in the chat, and it's, when is this project estimated to start? There are tenants living there and would be facing eviction. So what is the estimated time that you're looking to do this?
It depends on when how it goes through, when the timeline for this approval is. In this environment, it's not clear. It's really not clear.
What are the timelines that you're shooting for? Maybe that's a better question.
If God willing, if the application went through in a timely manner, we'd be looking at basically being rezoned by, let's say, the beginning of 2022. So with that in mind, and with the the nature of development, as Nick said, the environment, there would be a significant amount of time between that time and the time when we're actually building. As the applicant we've discussed, because displacement is always an issue. I don't think that there are any active leases right now on the units within any of these properties. Yoel, can you tell me if that's right?
Yes.
That's like yes, like 8,000 times. But yeah. Okay, good.
He has multiple iterations open.
If you have a phone on, you should hang up the phone too.
Right. So that's the we can do a little bit of a deeper look into those tendencies, but that's my understanding from you all.
Thank you for those questions. Ms. Weatherspoon, we've got one more item on the agenda that is contentious, very much related to much of the stuff we've seen already for MCRAM. And again, I want to point out that the neighborhood rezoning that CB8 has been requested for several years now, I will recommend that the community board defend it with the help of Majority Leader Cumbo, who is relaxed. She's not planning, she's term limited out, so she's got a relaxed approach to some of this. She's very arts oriented, but we can do arts within the envelope of MCRAM. And we still have the borough president who looks like he may be the next mayor. So we need to listen to each other and go forward within the vision for the community district that's embodied in the resolutions that have been issued. I don't want to cut people off, but we do have an item that we need to explore in depth because it has entered ULURP. And that is, that one is 840 Atlantic Avenue. And we've asked the proponent to work with us while we examine it closely. So the material we're about to see that's been prepared by Mr. Bocconi to elicit questions and comments from the audience, I want to have presented now so that we can take a closer look at 840 Atlantic Avenue and the rezoning there. That's going to be 18 stories and 310 dwelling units. What we saw at 1034 Atlantic, 1034, 1042 Atlantic is 17 stories with 210 dwelling units. So we're making close comparisons, and we need to be clear about how these proposals are rushing past our request for neighborhood rezoning. And quite frankly, I personally don't recommend that we allow that. But I'm going to ask Mr. Bocconi to give us some insights into 840 Atlantic Avenue and the rezoning that's being requested there.
Sure, thank you, Ethel. I'm gonna talk a little bit about some issues related to the 840 Atlantic Avenue ULURP, with a goal of sort of moving us towards a place that we'll be able to come up with some kind of a resolution. But some of these issues also apply to the other projects we've heard discussed this evening. And I'm going to give a little bit of an intro, not a very long intro at all on M-Crown. I did paste some information about how to find out more about M-Crown into the chat, but I will give a little bit of an intro there so we can talk about the context of M-Crown and how this project and what the history is and how this project relates to that history. Is everybody able to see my screen okay before I go on?
I can see it.
Okay, great. First of all, here's a little review of the M-Crown goals. These goals were laid out 6 years ago in April of 2015 originally. They are to use rezone the current M11 district to increase available density for commercial manufacturing uses mixed with residential. The idea is that the residential would cross-subsidize commercial and especially manufacturing uses and create accessible living wage jobs. This was before the days of MIH. Use market rate residential, I just mentioned that, use market rate residential development to cross-subsidize affordable housing and manufacturing. Look at setting the affordability levels based on median income for Community District 8 and tailor allowable manufacturing uses in the new zone to maximize potential for living wage jobs. This is kind of the process well, this is what the history has been like. This is, I think, a very, very important slide for both the community board members and folks who have not been familiar with this process to understand. M-Crown got its genesis when we started to find we were getting requests for variances in the M11 zone. And we set up a committee to come up with a policy with respect to those variances, which we did, as you see, early in 2014. We began having discussions the same year with DCP about a rezoning in that district, and in the summer of 2014, they expressed interest in working with us to do that. In 2015, we made the community board passed a resolution calling for a rezoning study on the part of the city planning. The next year, mandatory and inclusionary housing was passed. That changed the calculus of our models for what M-Crown would be. We, at that point, passed a resolution preferencing industrial use over affordable housing, not because we're not in favor of affordable housing, but because we are, but because we want to make sure that we can retain accessible jobs in this part of Brooklyn. So now we're in 2017. In November 2017, 840 Atlantic, the applicants closed on the ground lease for the property. Now, then we're in the early part of 2018, and in February of 2018, DCP presented us with a rezoning framework for M-Crown, which we had asked almost 4 years earlier, but had not been presented until a few months after the 840 Atlantic ground lease closed. They held a pre-application meeting with the applicants in August of 2018, just about the same time that the community board, the council member, and the borough president sent comments on the framework with our recommendations about use and density. In September of 19, there's somebody who should be muted, who I'm hearing talking. If you would please mute, or someone can mute them, I would appreciate it. in September of 2019, the community board passed a resolution that affirmed the framework with the recommendations that had been developed with the council member and the borough president, and called for a multi-agency study. And then, of course, what's not on my timeline is we had COVID-19 in 2020, and in the resulting city budget crunch, the idea of doing the ULURP application was shelved under the current administration. And then in this year, in February, somebody once again has got their, it should be muted, please. If you're not me speaking, please mute. In February, we again passed a resolution reaffirming the density recommendations for private applications shortly before the 840 Atlantic application was certified. Now, what does all this mean? I mean, what this says is, at a time when the community board has engaged the Department of City Planning to come up with a holistic plan to rezone this part of Brooklyn, the Department of City Planning is having a discussion with a private developer of which the community board is totally unaware. The letter that was sent in August of 2018 specifically lays out density targets for all of the subzones in the framework. And we received no feedback on that density for this entire length of time. But we know from the presentations we've gotten from the applicants that they were getting feedback from the Department of City Planning on density. Here's the framework. If you look over here on the western end of the high density C zone, you see this L-shaped lot that is colored slightly differently and is intended to represent greater density. This was a framework that was provided to us in February of 2018. Here's a close-up of that lot. This is 840 Atlantic Avenue. And this is the 840 Atlantic Avenue rezoning map from March of 2021. It's the same lot. Now, I don't know if the 840 Atlantic application looks this way because of DCP's framework, or DCP's framework looks this way because of the 840 Atlantic Avenue applicants' desire to develop here. And it doesn't matter. What matters is that as the community board, we felt like we were having a discussion with a city agency about a neighborhood rezoning, and then found out that they were having a discussion with somebody else, with a project that's basically going to drive, as a precedent, density for the rest of this high density C zone that you see here. And we know that's going to happen. And it is exactly what we're seeing rolling out tonight. So, you know, we've heard a lot of stuff from these applicants. I'm sorry, I respect you all. And I'm delighted that you want to develop in our neighborhood. And I mean that sincerely. But we've heard a lot of stuff about how they want to work with the community, and they've been a part of the MCROM meetings, and it's true, they have. But there's been a separate dialogue going on outside the community board, and I don't blame the applicants, but I don't understand, quite frankly, why the Department of City Planning let it get to this state. Because we did not need to be having a contentious discussion about density on Atlantic Avenue tonight. We could have been figuring out how to move forward together, but instead we're talking about something that should have been resolved 2 years ago, and it's frustrating. And I really don't need to hear personally. I'm sorry. I'm gonna tone it down in a second, but I don't need to hear anymore about how the applicants are working with the community board. We understand it, but we can no longer have two discussions about this. Our resolution in September of 2019 affirmed the August 2018 letter, and it states that here in the commercial subzone, we're looking for an FAR of 6 to 7, with the 7 being a preferential density bonus for additional commercial use. This is from August of 2018. This is, and as Richard Lobel mentioned, I think all of these applicants are familiar with this language. The reason that we're getting R9 applications is because of this second set of discussions, which again is very, very hard for us, for me personally, to understand. Just want to go through so we see what we're talking about. This is the 6 to 7 FAR bulk that's represented by the community board's August 2018 letter, which actually was sent out under the majority leader's letterhead with the borough president's signature as well. This is 8.5 FAR, which is comparable to the R9A we're seeing. And then this is 9.5, which is comparable to the R9X or the C6 3X that we're seeing at 840 Atlantic. Again, you see the same things. The community board's not against residential upzoning. We're not against housing, but we're looking to moderate the density here. Okay, let's talk about 840 Atlantic. Here's what is from the community board's resolution and the August 2018 letter with elected officials. 6 FAR with 1 floor commercial, 7 FAR with 2 floors. We think we're making a rough comparison to R8A and saying we're talking about 14 stories. 840 Atlantic is proposing C6 3X. That's a 9.7 FAR, and it can have up to 6.5 commercial with community facility at 20 stories. Now, the applicants, I'm sure, will want to say that that's not what their building is, but that's the zoning they're asking for. And if they get it, they're under no obligation to build a building that's less than that. And so, for all of the discussion about what's in all of these buildings, and they're beautiful and they've been designed by very talented professional people, but at the end of the day, what we're working on is a zoning application, not a building plan. There are a couple of alternatives we can consider that get us closer to the M-Crown density vision using existing zoning tools. And this is a part I would like both the committee members and the applicants to just focus on here. I think there are three such existing zoning tools that we could consider in the scope of this ULURP application as a possible response from the community board. One of them is the C61 R72 zone. That would result in FAR of 6.5 with 4.6 residential. Unfortunately, since it's not a contextual district, the height limit would be a sky exposure plane, which could range from between 14 to 17 stories about. However, it does incentivize 3 floors of commercial use. And that's because it would, in giving the 6.5 FAR, only allow 4.6 for residential, and the 1.9 would of commercial, because of core and lobby and everything else, would need to be probably would be spread out over 3 floors. This could result in a taller building than what we've asked for in M-Crown, but the use would be similar, and the overall density would be similar. The second possibility is to look at a C62A zoning. That's an R8A equivalent. We'd have a maximum FAR of 7.2 with maximum 6 commercial and a 14-story height. Under this scenario, only 1 floor of commercial is required at a 30-foot depth. If we were to go in this direction, we might be seeking some kind of a commitment for a specific amount of floor area for commercial to get closer to M-Crown. And last, we could look at a C4 5D zone. That's a 5.6 FAR. It's more restrictive with a maximum 4.2 commercial and an 11-story building. Again, that has the same 30-foot depth requirement, and again, we'd probably would want to consider seeking a commitment for more more commercial floor area. So those are existing zoning tools that could be brought to bear in our response to not just 840 Atlantic, but the other applications we heard tonight. We do not have to accept the density that we are being presented with. I want to talk a little bit about public benefits. What we've effectively seen in all three applications is the idea that we could have more density. We could allow greater density with these community benefits that the developers have devised and presented to the city council member. The problem with that is we don't have any, we have not gone through any process of as a community board to be so specific about what public benefits should be a part of these developments. We have, we have a broad list of uses. They are job creating uses, and part of the reason they're a broad list of uses is because the Department of City Planning objected to us focusing on light industrial uses. And so we've tried to be flexible. But that flexibility has sort of created this scenario where we're getting a lot of proposals that have daycare, youth centers, and schools. And those are great things. But that's, from a planning perspective, one of the difficulties in having the applicants decide those things for us is we haven't gone through this sort of a planning process. So I think we need to look at both how binding these promises are that are being made for these spaces, and also what the community board has really asked for. In the first instance, I believe we should be looking, if we've got a project, and I'll use 840 Atlantic as an example, that comes in and says they're going to provide floor area for an arts center, we should not be satisfied with a 15-year lease for the arts center. At the end of the 15 years, the arts center could renew, but they might not be able to afford to renew, or they might not wish to stay for 15 years, or they may no longer be in existence. And that floor area could then be marketed to anyone. If we're really creating an arts center as a benefit in a project like this, we should be looking for a permanent restriction on the floor area for that use. The second thing we should be focusing on is affordable housing. 840 Atlantic came in proposing MIH option 2. I'm absolutely certain the applicants understand the community board does not want to see more middle income housing in community board 8. We don't want to see, we have a problem with displacement, and the displacement problem is for tenants at the low end of the affordability spectrum. So we should be looking not only for option 1, but we should be looking to map MIH options 1 and 3 and look for the applicants to make a binding commitment for their affordable housing to be under option 3, which is 20% of units affordable at an average of 40% AMI, or about $41,000 for a family of 3. This is a reasonable ask to jump ahead of the public process. Ms. Tyus mentioned before what the drivers are behind the board wanting a neighborhood rezoning. We want a holistic plan and a holistic rezoning. We don't want private applicants encouraged to come in with more, asking for more density than we've laid out in our plan. But if they do want to jump ahead of the public process and conform to the community board's density requirements, it's reasonable for us to ask for something back for that. And in my view, I think affordable housing has to be very, very close to the top of the list of community needs now, when you see how the demographics are changing in this neighborhood, if we want to hang on to any diversity at all. Moving ahead with these applications with commitments for restrictions and affordable housing like I've described aren't the only way we could go at this point. There are other alternatives. The developer for 840 Atlantic could withdraw the application. They could refile it as a text amendment that would actually create the zoning tool that the community board has been hoping that the Department of City Planning would work for us to create, which is a mixed and residential district of 6 FAR with 7 FAR if we have more than 2 floors of commercial. If applicants want to work with us to create the zoning district that we've asked for but have not yet been able to get through a neighborhood rezoning, I think we should listen to that. The second other alternative is the developer could withdraw the application in expectation of the neighborhood rezoning. It's obviously not going to happen under this administration, but in a year we'll have a new mayor. We'll also have a city in recovery. And hopefully we will have the Department of City Planning that's interested in moving ahead again with the M-Crown project. I totally understand the frustration that applicants and property owners have about how long this has taken. I'm really frustrated by it too. This isn't what I do for a living. And I didn't think it was going to go on this long. But there are benefits to a holistic plan for this part of Brooklyn, and they're worth pursuing. And if you want to come there with us, we're happy to have you along on that as well. So this is basically what I wanted to go over with especially the community members this evening, the community board members this evening, because over the next month we're going to have to think more about the response that we'll make in ULURP. And I don't think there's ever been a more important community board vote on a ULURP application, because effectively, this is us asserting our vision for something that otherwise is really, I'm sorry to say it, but is really being taken from us. And it'll be a precedent for the rest of Atlantic Avenue. So if it's okay, Ms. Tias, if there's any questions about any of the zoning options that I've discussed or anything else, we can have those.
Thank you, Mr. Bocconi. I want to turn this over to Vice Chair Weatherspoon for questions, and I want to remind people that we do have the applications proponents in the audience, and they're offering to repeat their presentation from March. I don't know if we want to do that, but we do have this project on the schedule again for April. So Ms. Weatherspoon, I leave it to you.
Okay, we have, again, there's a lot of more comments than questions, but I will ask Mr. Desmond Atkins if he could speak with his comment. Mr. Atkins?
I'm unmuting.
Great.
Gib, thank you for that presentation. And after 6 years of work, I would say that your labor, you've been fruitful. But we've basically been sliced and diced by the municipal people who are working at the will of the developers. I remember what happened on the Lower East Side and how they took someone with a dedicated mortgage and basically through some kind of magic made it turn into the ending of that lease, and then along the same side tried to force the homeless center to be at the edge of our district. And it seems I'm looking at the vista that was presented with this project. While it may be very artful architecture, it really destroys the texture of what Brooklyn has been. Brooklyn is starting to look like Midtown Manhattan above 42nd Street. And they're saying that they're protecting the brownstones. I've seen that one of the very powerful people on this has said that they live in CB2 and they're looking out for us. But it seems to me that CB8 and CB9 are the areas that are being carved up, and certain of it are being sacrificed. And my question is that after you've continued to do more work and you ask for carve-outs, what's to say that there's going to be a guarantee? I had this question with you a while ago, and you assured me that it could be done. And I'm looking to saying that these folks will wait you out 5, 10, 20 years. And maybe they don't think that matters to you, but it matters to me in the scope of what this community looks like. That's basically it.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Mr. Atkins. Ms. Witherspoon, are there other questions in the chat for either Mr. Vacconi or for Dr. Kaplan?
Hi, Ethel.
Kathy, excuse me, Kathy Iceland?
Yes, thank you. I think Sarah has the same question as well. I was wondering if you could just review the third option in the alternative existing zoning tools, which would allow the 17-story building. That's, if he could provide a little more clarity on that, I would appreciate it, because it seems to be out of the, what the M-Crown had first
Well, it
provided.
is. Yeah.
I know it is, but why would that be acceptable? Thank you.
Well, there's a lot of pieces to a zoning district, right? There's density and bulk.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Gib. Who's ever on the line that is not speaking other than Gib Vacconi, could you please mute yourself? Thank you.
So in answer to your question, Kathy, there are several components to a zoning district. I'm sorry, somebody's still talking in the background. One of them is density. Another one is use. And a third one is height and bulk. So we don't have here any perfect existing zoning tool that achieves what we want in the M-Crown zone. And that's why we've been going through this protracted process, trying to either create these tools or maybe adapt some existing tools with the Department of City Planning. And if there was an existing zoning tool that would get us to where we want to be, it's even possible we might be there now, but there's not. And it's for the exact reason you see here. None of these, this is just taking one of the subzones of the M-Crown framework as an example. The same problem exists in the other subzones as well. We don't see that we have any one existing zoning tool that takes us to where we want to be. So these are all compromises in one way or another. The one that you pointed out, the C61 R72 zone, potentially could yield a taller building. Would it be as tall as the building the applicants want to build? Probably not. Would it be taller than 14 stories? It could be, but it would be of less bulk and less density than the 7 FAR that was contemplated in the August 2018 letter. And it would have more commercial use than we intended in the August 2018 letter. So there are trade-offs. You potentially would be taking a building that's a little bit taller, but you would be getting more job uses out of that building, and you'd have slightly less density. So this is, again, I'm not here to promote one of these over the other at this point. I'm here to sort of put them all on the table as the things that seem to be closest to what we were trying to achieve. And this is one way we could respond to the Euler review.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Vacconi. Ms. Tyus, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, we have Benjamin Stark and Stephanie Marazzi who would like to speak about their application. Are you aware of this?
Yes, I've been copying everyone and saying that they are available to answer questions. I've said that.
Thank you. We'd really like an opportunity to speak on Mr. Vacconi's presentation about our application. You know, we're an applicant to the City Planning Commission and the City Council for a ULURP application, and we'd like an
Mr.
opportunity
Stark,
to speak
Mr.
about this project.
Mr. Stark, hello, Mr. Stark. Did you not present to the committee last month?
We presented the committee last month, and we were asked to come back. So we prepared a short presentation, and we waited for a number of hours for a number of applications that are not in ULURP to present. And so, you know, we would have liked it if our application was first, considering that we're actually in ULURP and they're not. But be that as it may, we would really like an opportunity to speak, because we actually think that Mr. Vicconi's presentation here is in furtherance of the conversation that we would like to have.
I agree with you, and I have to repeat that I texted you and everyone else that you were here and available to answer questions. That's what this is about. And we can do this again next month, because this is very important to us as a community. So I'm not trying to close you out, and I haven't closed you out. I did text you that in the chat to everyone. So people know you are here to answer questions, but they haven't asked any questions of you. This is what I would like to see now, rather than go through your March presentation in whole again. Can we do that?
We can. We weren't going to present our March presentation again. We prepared new comments based on, you know, feedback and understanding of this conversation that's been going on for the last month. We've been trying to, you know, read the tea leaves on what people are saying about our project, both in this venue and in the press, and so we prepared, you know, some new comments to talk about.
Okay.
But
thank you, Mr. Stark. Just keep in mind, we're not taking a vote tonight. This is a hearing, a two-part hearing. This is part 1 of 2, and we will do this again next month because it's raised so many questions, and you're just the edge of the blade that we're looking at here. Please proceed.
So you're okay with me speaking?
Yes, of course.
Oh, okay. I thought you wanted to
said that a couple of times now. Okay?
Sorry. I was
questions directly to you.
Okay, we'll go really quick. We promise. Like Richard said, his presentation is going to be quick. We'll go quicker than his.
Okay, good. Thank you. Let's keep it at 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, thank you.
It's 9:22. We'll be done by 9:30.
Do we have a way to share?
Let's go.
Let's do it. Do we have a way to share the screen?
I don't think so. I don't think we can share our screen.
Really?
Is there not a way to share the screen?
How do the other people get to do it?
Up at the top on the right, it says share content. Got it? Up at the top of your screen.
Maybe we should do a few questions, because obviously we're having issues.
Okay, we were looking for questions. I did tell people you were here to answer questions. So Ms. Weatherspoon, can you suss out the questions? We need to use Q&A next time.
Now, I just want to say, that wasn't clear to me. I don't know if it was clear to anyone else that there'd be any questions and answers, a discussion with this applicant. So I'm not sure. I wasn't aware. It wasn't clear to me. So I don't know if anyone else knew. But are there any questions? Because there are none lodged in the chat. And if you have any, please put it. Please put your name if you have a question for this couple.
We're gonna try logging off and back on to see if then we can share.
Okay.
You might have to make them a panelist.
CB8, are you there? Ms. George?
Yes, we are there. We only need, the person only needs to be made a panelist when we schedule the meeting as an event. This meeting is scheduled as a general meeting, so anyone can share their page, share their content.
Again, that control is up on the upper left of your screen.
And they were able to share their content last month.
Okie dokie. I see something popping up here. Great. Okay. Keep it short, guys. Here, 9:24 already.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, is our screen sharing at this point?
Yes, we see page, I can't see the page number, but go ahead, make it big.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, this is a slide everyone has seen. Once again, I'm Ben Stark. This is my wife, Stephanie. We're lawyers at Hirsch and Singer Epstein. We represent Vanderbilt Atlantic Holdings, the developer at 840 Atlantic Avenue. As a number of people have already spoke about, this is a rezoning of a low density manufacturing district to a higher density district that will permit residential use. Of course, this application will establish an MIH area and will amend the zoning resolution, like some of the other applications talked about, to widen the sidewalks on Atlantic, but also on Vanderbilt for our project. This is 840 Atlantic Avenue. This is the proposal that we had shared in our March meeting, and I shared this image back in December. If approved, this application will facilitate the development of an 18-story building with an FAR of 8.83. It would include approximately 316 new housing units, of which approximately 95 would be affordable under option 2 of MIH. Although, as we've said a number of times, option 1, option 2, this is a conversation that we're having with the community and with Councilmember Cumbo. We are not wedded to option 2 by any means. The building will also include commercial and community facility uses on the ground and second story. Why is this application have merit? We've been having a conversation throughout the evening about a number of projects and about the dynamics of what has occurred so far in the M-Crown study process. But at the end of the day, it's whether or not land is developed with something that is worthy given its conditions and given public policy rationale. This is a location that is perfect for housing. We have an immensely busy street on Atlantic Avenue. We have busy streets at least at this portion of Vanderbilt. Once we get up this far north, we have a number of large buildings that many of you are familiar with that are either built or are coming on, will eventually come online. And the site is also within proximity of public transportation. We're 2 blocks away from an AC station just to the north. And although this was said earlier that I had said that people would ride the bus if they lived at this project, it's a little bit of a mischaracterization of what I'd said at the last meeting. I said that this site allows for multimodal transit options, meaning not just subway, but bus. So it's not that someone will always take the bus to the subway. It's that at a site like this, adjacent to busy, wide streets, you have the options. You have the linkages and the connections to get around the borough and around the city. Those types of linkages aren't as present in other areas of the M-Crown district. We continue to speak about M-Crown as it's a monolith. It's not a monolith. This is a location, given its position on the northwest corner, that is unique and is appropriate for more housing. And that is why it was identified as such by the city's planners. So let's move it along. And so why is this project important? Sandy's introduction earlier is perfect for what we're trying to get across tonight. The city needs more housing for all types of people, but more so than anybody, we need housing for low-income New Yorkers, not just anywhere, but in locations with access to high opportunity. There's been a lot of housing that has been developed in this city in the last 10 years that is not providing those opportunities. Most low-income housing built in the last 10 years has been located in neighborhoods that do not provide opportunity. Your neighborhood is the exception. Your neighborhood would be a wonderful place for people to live on all parts of the socioeconomic spectrum, especially lower income people. We are facing a fiscal crisis in the city. It is going to become harder and harder to publicly finance affordable housing. We work for an affordable housing law firm. We just happen to be the zoning people there. it is going to be more and more difficult as time goes on to build affordable housing. We have to rely in certain circumstances, especially in high income, high opportunity neighborhoods where land costs are very high. We have to rely on the private industry to privately finance affordable housing. This project will provide 95 affordable housing units without $1 of public subsidy. That is not the rule, that is the exception. Most all affordable housing that has been built in this city in the last 10 years has been built with public subsidy. The city is not going in that direction. We're going in the other direction. We have to rely more now on the private sector. This city is just not building enough housing generally at all. I noticed a commenter had pointed out in the chat just a little while ago that New York City builds far less housing than anywhere in the country. That continues to be the case. This is why the city, in its Where We Live report from this past fall, identified the need to increase housing opportunities, particularly for low-income New Yorkers in amenity-rich neighborhoods like yours. Continue. And let's talk about what M Crown can do for this city. I really appreciate that Gib brought in a reintroduction about what the prior conversations were about M Crown, but they're not quite a panacea. You know, we can look back at some of the community, the M Crown committee's reports. This one's from November, of a number of months after the one that Gib had shown. And in this report, during a build year horizon of a couple decades, we're only seeing that M Crown could produce somewhere between 600 and 850 affordable housing units. That is laudable, and we appreciate that these types of numbers are thrown around. But when we look at a project like 840 Atlantic, 840 Atlantic could account for anywhere from 10 to 15% of all affordable housing units even anticipated to be built in M Crown. And the important takeaway of that is build year horizon. That sounds like a mumbo jumbo, and in a way it is mumbo jumbo, but what it means is just because you rezone a neighborhood, it doesn't mean that the neighborhood will all of a sudden be built. The properties have to sell, buildings need to be raised, capital has to be put together, and that's why when the city has studied the impacts of its rezonings, they try to anticipate what will happen over a given timeline, 10 or 20 years. So to think that this project is ready to put a shovel in the ground in short order, we expect to start building in 2022. We could be providing 10 to 15% of all affordable housing units even anticipated for this community in one shot. We're ready to go. So let's keep going. And all of this can be done in a building that is contextually appropriate for the neighborhood. It is. We heard someone during the March 4th meeting ask some questions in the text box saying, what is the status of 809 Atlantic? It wasn't our project. That, as everyone knows, is across the street from ours. That question really hit home for my wife and I. If we can't always understand the state of a 300-foot tall building across the street, how is it that a 195-foot tall building will be that objectionable? It won't be. It will become part of your community. It will weave itself into the fabric of this neighborhood, and while simultaneously providing a place for people to live. This application, we've all seen this slide before. It is in keeping with the overall dynamic of M Crown, which was to position density, at least in this particular conversation, to position density in the places where it's appropriate, and then have the density that follows be reactive. So in that regard, I completely appreciate the concerns of this community and in regards to the precedent. But we just, tonight is really a great opportunity. We've seen 3 separate projects on Atlantic Avenue, 17 stories, and now this one at 18. Where is it that density makes sense? it makes sense on the corner of Vanderbilt, adjacent to the buildings that are even taller than it. From there, we step down. We step down moving east. So it strikes me as that we actually are all at the table here, able to talk about where this south side of Atlantic is going. We have a number of projects right in front of us here. Continue. Once again, this is the proposed development adjacent to its much taller neighbors. And as we've often talked about, the application will widen sidewalks on Atlantic and Vanderbilt, really making the pedestrian realm a little, quite a bit more pleasant. And that's it. So I really appreciate, Ethel, you giving us the opportunity to speak, and we are available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Weatherspoon.
So we have two questions. So I'm going to ask that Mr. Alan Rossner speak, and then after him, Ms. Sarah Lazar.
Mr. Rosner, are you there?
Sarah?
Yeah. So, hi,
Thank you.
yeah, I'm Sarah Lazar. I'm a board member, and I was wondering, you have a specific number of affordable units, but you didn't specify which MIH option you were planning on including. And as you can see, as you saw in the previous presentation, the M-Crown plans asked for specifically a commitment to the option 3, which has the deepest level of affordability. I was wondering if you could be more specific in your presentation, or more specific about what MIH option you were planning on, you were intending to include in this building. And you know, if you have any sense of what the likely asking rents are going to be in the rest of the building. And I also was wondering if you're planning on applying for 421A tax abatements. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So the application, because when you get certified into ULURP, you do have to identify an option that you are pursuing. We did at the time of getting certified identify option 2 as this application's option. However, as I said at the beginning, our client Vanderbilt Atlantic Holdings is open to either option 1 or option 2, and so we're using this process to solicit feedback on it. Option 3 we actually hadn't had much of a conversation about, but we'll definitely consider it and talk to our client about it. Oh, there are other questions.
So hold on a second. Ms. Lazar, are you done? Have they answered your questions?
Well, I also had that question about what the likely rents are going to be in the rest of the building. And I also want to know, are you planning to get a 421A tax abatement for this building as well?
Those are Tom questions.
Both those questions would be really perfect for our project sponsor, our client, who's actually here tonight. Tom, are you available?
Yeah, I'm here. So the other market rate apartments, I think on average, we're looking at anywhere between 3,000 to 3,500. Their studios are going to be lower than that, probably closer to 2,500 for the market rate apartments. And we will be getting 421A for the project.
Sorry, was that will or won't?
We will.
Okay. I'm just wondering if everybody on the call knows what 421A is.
Please explain, Ms. Lazar.
So 421A is a New York State tax abatement that requires that the units be affordable for a certain amount of time. So, the combination of zoning plus this tax abatement means that sometimes developers might be getting kind of credit for creating affordable housing that they would have had to create with just one or the other. Sorry, that was some editorializing. I'm going to stop it.
Sarah, let me just say a few things about that. One, that the fact that this is the MIH project, some of these programs have overlap. The units that the MIH units will be affordable in perpetuity. They can never be flipped back to market rate. And I can see some people in the chat talking about public subsidy. I need to clarify. There's a difference between public subsidy in a tax program and true public funding. We work at an affordable housing law firm that has worked on thousands of units of affordable housing and just in the New York City area in the last couple of years. It is common for affordable housing development to be funded through what's known as low-income housing tax credits, HPD term sheet funds, and other actual go to a closing table public dollars. So I hear you, Gib. I can see you writing into the chat, calling me out on my vocabulary here. But there is a difference between there are tax abatements in this city for commercial development too that are as of right. So it's obviously a conversation about as of right tax abatements, whether for residential or commercial development, is a wider conversation. But there's not going to be a closing with public funding to build affordable housing here.
Okay, we have a couple, because time is moving really quickly. We're approaching 10 o'clock. There are a couple of questions here. Mr. Rosner is having technical issues. So a couple of his questions are, where will the commercial and private garbage be placed? And also, if there's parking and deliveries on Pacific Street, what traffic mitigations will be provided?
Those are really good questions. So the project has its parking garage on Pacific. Tom, is the trash is also located on Pacific as well? That's right.
I think that depends on the commercial tenant and the residential, but I think on Pacific for the residential, yes.
And as far as traffic mitigation measures, we would of course position the parking garage in such a way that there would be increased visibility, so as to not like kind of cause any crashing when people are leaving the garage. That's right.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize there was a second question. I think we will certainly mitigate the traffic that's currently happening on the site by getting rid of the drive-through. In terms of mitigating the traffic, we have 90 parking spots. I don't think that's an excessive amount for a building of this size. As far as we know, rentals, they tend to have lower car ownership. So I don't really think we're going to be kind of generating car traffic on Pacific.
Yeah, I think when we had spoke to some of the members of the community, not in this setting, a number of them had mentioned how people use the McDonald's lot to do a cut through from Atlantic to Vanderbilt or Vanderbilt to Atlantic. I can't recall which one, but so that kind of activity right now, which is causing a potentially dangerous condition, will be removed once this building is developed.
There's also a question about why not increasing the number of units to at least 50% of the building to help set a different and more positive precedent. What do you have to say about that?
That becomes simply unrealistic from an economic perspective to build with private funding.
Okay. We have one last question here. If sanitation trucks and the parking garage are on Pacific Street, how will they not generate traffic?
We're not saying it won't generate traffic. I think it will be a mitigation compared to what the current traffic is, because we do see people driving from Atlantic exiting on Pacific each time that I've been on the site. And I see Kathy shaking her head. I guess we are in disagreement about that point.
Okay, and Mr. Rossner has mentioned again about the 100+ unit that's building also has parking on Pacific Street, and mitigations are needed. So that's a concern here. So Ethel, Ms. Tyus, we don't
Yes.
have any more questions here, and we are closing in at 10 p.m.
Thank you very much. We've all
Thank
been
you.
very patient with this process. We are looking at people who waited a long time to try to build something in an area that was only 1 stories for years and years and years. And this is such an unfortunate confluence of events that I can only say for this project and the others that will be coming along, for the people who waited, who bought out the prior owners that were there for the junkyard and whatever else, we will revisit 840 Atlantic Avenue in May, and it will go to the full board in May. And at our next land use meeting on 840 Atlantic in May, we will vote and send a recommendation to the full board for this project. And I thank you all for your patience. And if you have questions for next time, send them into the board in advance. Take a look at the materials that were posted, that I put the link in the chat from the other project as well. And we'll see what we can do to become more expert in looking at this. Keep in mind that tax credits and abatements are ways of delaying payment, and time is money. So if you don't have to pay out right away and you can wait, then that's more money in your pocket for the time being. So we need housing. If these developers have to change their spread between affordable and market rate housing, their lenders look at that very, very carefully. So most of them will be reluctant to add more affordable housing as we request that from them, and I hope that we do. Keep that in mind. We need to know exactly and realize exactly what we're up against in the financial structure for development of this type. And we'll see each other again next month at the Land Use Committee meeting, first Thursday. Full board meeting is next Thursday. Keep an eye on the calendar and CB8 website, and join us for more fun next Thursday. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
There was some questions that wasn't being answered, a whole lot of them.
We'll try to do a Q&A next time, Ms. Haynes, okay? All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ethel, I wasn't able to access the group chat. Is this because I signed on without signing up?
I'm not sure. I apologize.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Yeah, we'll try to get this more organized next time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.